It's like we're live again. I'd like to welcome everybody to Distilling 101, Distillers Talk, questions and answers. Fun, easy source to come in, hang out, ask questions, help answer questions, learn about distilling and mashing in and making a lot of different liquors. So I'm going to start sharing some links while we got people coming in and get the word out there. So bear with me while I share these links. It'll take a while. Things are going slowly for me today. Very slowly. Hope everybody's having a good week so far. Happy hump day to everybody. What's going on, Bare Knuckle? What's up, Olympic Dave? What's up, Bill? How would I start moonshine? Well, best thing to do is just come in and start asking questions like that. They help us start. Uh, First, we got to go over. Be a good place to start, I guess, for a lot of people. Let's let some more people kind of come in, and we'll deal with your question first. It's a pretty long-winded answer, um, but we're going to start basic with the basics and what you need. What's going on, Jeff? What's up, Aha? So, Brian, we'll start with the basics and stuff that you have to have. Of course, like a steel and certain tools that really make it a lot easier and will help you progress more rapidly than having to learn things the hard way. So, what's going on, John? Yeah, yeah. Figuring out what steel, what budget you got, things of that nature, is a big part of it. Um, and let's see. Let me go ahead and share these links while I'm just talking. But trying to find out what you can afford because there's a big difference in steel prices and to be honest with you, one of the cheapest steels, which would probably be a keg steel, uh, and I've seen just as good liquor come out as that is $3,000 copper steel. So um, sometimes going cheap uh, has an impact on the quality, whereas you can start out with something as basic as a keg steel and work your way up and modify it over time and 15 gallon steel. Well, it's 15 gallons and a half, I guess the actual keg is, but I guess you put 12, 13 gallons in there at a time to distill. You don't want to put too much in; it foams up on you, pukes. Um, but start with something as simple as a keg steel or one of these little Weber football steels or something like that. A couple $100 for a 18 and a half gallon steel that you can do 15 gallons in it pretty easily. Those work really well. On up to copper. Copper is probably the best steel material. Hands down. It's expensive. I mean, but the beauty of it is you can if you're decent with soldering and you're pretty handy, you can build your own. So you can go buy you a sheet of copper and hammer it out, and next thing you know, you got pretty decent little steel going on. It doesn't have to be perfect. I've seen some steels that are far from perfect, but they try to share these links, but they do really well. I've seen some really pretty shoddy work, to be honest, but as long as it doesn't leak, and can hold the what little pressure there is in a steel, it's going to be it's something that you're going to be able to use. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look perfect. It just has to function. And as long as you have something functional, should work pretty well for you. I'm kind of trying to put a little time in between my posts. Let's see who. So I'm trying to post these links, but yeah, I mean a good copper steel. Copper helps remove your sulfides from the distillate as it distills off. So you got sulfides bonding to the copper, but we found ways to kind of get around that by using copper mesh and the rashing rings we talk about. You can use copper rashing rings and get a little bit of reflux out of those, and also strip out some sulfides while you're at it, which works pretty well. So I do have some plans. I posted some plans for like a little 12-gallon pot on the militia page and on the DIY page. So if you're in either one of those, you can go to the files and look it up, and it's got patterns, that you can lay down, and you can scale them up and down depending on what size of steel you want to buy. It's scalable. So, but it's little templates and gives some measurements and stuff. So, if you want to build your traditional type pot, I'd recommend when it comes time to making your cape, come up and maybe come up to like a 4-inch, and that way you could put a 4-inch ferrule on top instead of having to do the cap with the pasting, and using flour for pasting and stuff. That kind of gets old. Doing that, it basically sucks. I'll be straight up. I've done it a lot in the past and cleaned it up and deal with it. It does kind of suck. So and there's the last post that wouldn't go. So all right, got that far. So let me go over here and say howdy to everybody that's come in. What's going on, John? Yeah, it's good evening, brother. I was posting links. I'm not able to see both pages while I'm posting links. So what's going on, Brian? I'm gonna kind of get caught up here. What's up, Bill? Um, you're welcome, Eric. I enjoy it, brother. I love getting in here and helping out. What's going on, Steve? Hello, Lisa. What's up, Curtis? Hey, Brian. What's up, David? Good to see you on here, brother. It's like we got the usual suspects in here. Better hurry. I know, man. I got them done. Facebook cut me off. They said no more. Said you're spamming. You're just a spammer. I'm just a spammer. But picking out a good steel, basically you just got to figure out what your budget's going to be. So we can start with a $35 keg, and just carefully let off all the pressure, remove the down tube, and take all that apparatus out. I can't remember what they call it. I know that the anyway, I just call it the down tube. I used to know what the damn name for a lot of this shit is, but I'm just getting too damn old. But um, yeah, I'm pretty sure I posted it to the militia. Let me double check. Um, so just with a keg, I ran a keg still for a long time, and you don't have to have all the special ferrules and all that fancy stuff, but it certainly helps, So um, yeah, I did post on the militia, but it's already down about halfway down the page. Damon, I don't know why that happens, but it's yeah, it's in there. It shows 9 minutes ago, so good. Scared me like it. What's going on, Shadow Morgan? What's up, Trickster? Hey, Jeff, what's up? Just ran a sugar wash in my Baber 13.2 with 12 gallons of sugar wash and came out with 2.5 gallons at 110 proof down. Awesome. So what are your thoughts on it? I mean, sugar, makes it's pretty hot, but for your first time run, what are your thoughts on it? Downcomer, yeah, that's what I always call it. There's a technical term for it. I can't think of what it is. It's not a spigot. It's something. Uh, Age is a horrible thing. I'll think about it. 15. Yeah, it's 15 and a half. But I mean, you can get, any kind. And, some of those smaller ones work pretty well as for sub pots. You can get a 15-gallon keg and a little 5-gallon, you know, corny keg or some of those. Make little subs out of them or infusers. There's a lot of different things that you can do with it. If you know somebody that welds, well, I'm glad you're back, brother. I'll get to your question in just a second. Let me finish this one. We're talking about the steel selection, and I think Trickster's about to tell about his first sugar wash and how it came out. Generally, sugar wash is a little hot. What you're drinking. You got, you're drinking some alcohol because it's fiery. A lot of people call it fighting liquor because it's so fiery. Um, but it's one of the first and easiest things to do. It's a good way to start. Uh, you don't have a lot of expensive grains, heirloom grains, and malts, and a lot of time and money invested into it. It's simple, it's basic, it's easy to do, and it gets gets you broken in, gets you still broken in, so you can make that first run and see if you got any leaks and start learning how to make cuts. And with a sugar wash like that, you're not going to have a whole lot of methanol and force shots, so it's a little easier to deal with those and learn those. So you're dealing with fewer of them. Um, but you'll have some hot liquor. But I mean, when people drink it, a lot of people, that's what they expect when they drink moonshine, and they don't, expect a real smooth and real corn grainy, really good whiskey and great white dog flavors. A lot of old timers are used to drinking some rock gut stuff, that's just made with sugar, and so a lot of people, that's what they expect when they drink a moonshine. They expect it to be hot and horrible. That's just synonymous. If you ask a lot of people in the city, what are your thoughts on moonshine? It's like, oh, that's some strong stuff. So they automatically think it's high proof, which it doesn't necessarily have to be high proof. They think it's hot. They think it's strong. And it's and we're here to teach you how to make it to where it's not that way, so it can be more enjoyable, a little smoother, and something you can put on a little oak and brag about. So, but we'll work you in there. But first things first is figuring out what you want to make, and that'll help you decide what kind of still you want to get and cap. If you're more into brandies and whiskeys, just a simple keg still with a whiskey cap on it would be fine. And running it into a good, get you a 5/8 copper coil. You can get the stuff that they use on um, HVAC, it's already coiled up. It comes in a box of coil. But buy your copper coiled if you're going to use it for your worm, because you don't want to get the heavy stick. I think it's M or AL. I can't remember. I think the harder one, I think, is M. But you don't want to get the one that's real hard and hard to bend and trying to be bending sticks when you can just spend a few dollars more, get a big roll in a box, and get about 15 feet or so, and put in a 5-gallon bucket or a small garbage can or whatever you got, whatever you got to hold the water. Uh, Steel barrels, whatever you want to use, it depends on the size. But 15 feet in a 15 or in a 5-gallon bucket is plenty, and you'll be able to run a pretty decent size steel with something like that. But just starting out with a keg, $35. Wow, clean it out. It's got a ferrule on top. That ferrule's 2 inch. You're going to have to get a gasket to fit that. They make a specialty gasket to fit that. One side's flat, the other side's grooved. The flat side fits against the keg. The groove side fits against the spool or whatever you got attaching to the top of that. Phil Billy has them. I'm sure Tracy and some other people probably carry them as well. But it's a gasket that's flat on one side and has a ridge on the other. So if you get the type that's ridged on both sides, if it's silicone, you can take a razor and kind of trim it off. Be real careful and look for leaks when you do. You don't want anything leaking. That's why you want to run a test. And boil some water through. First things first. Just run some hot water through it and boil some water and run that through your system, and that'll help remove any kind of flux or any sediments or anything like that. And then you can run some vinegar through if you're worried about, oxidizing copper that's in there, green copper inside you. But generally a new coil is not going to have a lot of the green and stuff like that in there. So just a vinegar wash to clean it up a little bit, and run some hot water through it. Should be all you need to do with the keg steel. If you got a pressure washer, you just go in there and clean it out as good as you can. They make these little heads you can attach to your pressure washer tools that are like a rotary head that sprays out the side, kind of forward at an angle and out the sides. Those are ideal. Just to quick clean out after every use. Just kind of rinse it out real good. And what happens is at the surface of the mash inside your boiler, as you cook, it foams up. Just if you've ever boiled water in your life or cooked anything to where it boils, you'll see how it foams up like that. And a lot of times that foam mixed with a lot of stuff from your mash will leave a little residue all the way around, right at that water level or the mash level, where the liquid level is inside there. So just something kind of spray that off, that scummy buildup off from the foam, and rinsing everything out. After you dump it is fine. If you know somebody that has ability to cut some good holes in there and weld in ferrules on the side down low. You can use electric elements in that keg, if you want to go to an electric. So it's compatible with doing that. You can use them on propane. So you can put them on a turkey fryer and run them, or you can run them on wood, a wood fire, coals. So I don't know about coal itself. I don't think that'd get pretty hot, but uh, just wood and let it turn to coals, and then that would be fine. Shovel in some coals, and use that to cook it with. So it's pretty versatile. Versatile. You disassemble it, put your parts in a box, hide your head, and just set the keg in the corner, and it looks like a beer keg sitting there. So kind of nondescript. It doesn't look like a moonshine still. It just looks like a legal beer keg sitting there. So it rouse any suspicions when people see it sitting there. So that's another good thing about it. But you can make some pretty good liquor just out of a keg still, believe it or not. And there's a lot of modifications you can make to it. I didn't have all these mods when I was younger using it, but you can put a 4-inch ferrule on the top there and use that as a clean out where you can get down in there and scrub it out if you ever want to, have to, need to. If you ever scorch anything, you're going to have to do that or get another keg, so it's going to be hard to get in there. But I've heard people, that don't have the clean outs, and want to clean out some of the scum and stuff. It's, I've heard people putting, little pebbles in there and water and rolling it down the hill and letting the tumbling, you know, uh, gravel, kind of scrape the sides clean. I guess that works. I just took mine to, I didn't have a pressure washer at the time when I was younger using it. I was pretty young and didn't have a lot of money yet and couldn't afford to buy a pressure washer. So I just take it to a car wash, and just use the rinse cycle on the car wash and just give her a good rinse and that'd be the end of that. But yeah, you can put some couple of ferrules in the sides at the bottom and use a couple of elements if you want to. You can put you use one of those ferrules, attach a drain, so you can have a drain on there, or you can just use you can just weld a drain directly to it if you don't want to use a ferrule. um, but having a drain's kind of handy, to drain stuff out. If you want to put more in and run it, you don't want to, and it's still hot, you can kind of drain out hot liquids and shut your drain off, take the cap off. Of course you want to do that after each run anyway so it doesn't implode. But and that's another good thing about kegs, they're not easy to implode. So one thing that all people should know is after you get done running your still, always open it up. So you're either removing your cap or you can put like a valve just on the top of your cape or whatever. Just it just has to have a free channel of air to the outside. That way it can huff and puff and draw air in as it cools, so it doesn't implode. So if you don't do that, you can ruin a pretty nice copper steel in a hurry. I've not seen a keg still implode, but I have seen 55-gallon barrels implode. So it's something to be wary of, and something you have to do after each run. The second you turn that heat off, open up a valve. It doesn't matter if it's going to spit out a little steam. You don't want to be inside, of course, doing that. If you're inside, you're going to have to take some, careful measures with fans and things of that nature. But you got to, especially if you're using like a thumper, you want to keep, you don't want it siphoning back some of that sump, and then creating a vacuum and then, imploding, which it will do. So, having a valve on the top is nice as well, so you can just open that thing up. Um, Keg not as critical, but it's if you just take off that top little tri clamp that we were talking about, where the fitting is on the top, the 2-inch ferrule on top of the keg. So if you just take that tri clamp off and just kind of move the head a little bit, that'll be fine. You can use your grill gloves because everything gets pretty hot. There's all the metal in that's going to get really hot. If you let's see. Yeah, like Barry was talking about. Yeah, if you can, yeah, you can use copper mesh. They have all copper mesh, just like scrubby stuff. It comes in rolls. Buy big rolls on Amazon. Make sure you're getting all copper. Don't get the copper plated steel because it sucks and it'll rust out on you. And you definitely don't want that. It ruin your run. But like you can take just regular copper tubing, unions, whatever. You can just throw them in there. It's called a Raschig ring, or ASCHIG, if you want to Google it and learn to read up on it. Typically, a lot of Raschig rings were ceramic. Uh, so I think the ones that come with a football steel, they send some ceramic ones with that. Um, Something about the ceramics, it's really finely porous, and it allows alcohol through, but not water molecules, but it will allow alcohol molecules through. Alcohol molecules are much smaller than a water molecule, so some of those are designed to be like a molecular sieve, if you will. Um, but just copper rashing greens, you can take just a copper tubing and just cut little 1 inch sections off it, little 1/2 inch sections, and just deburr them and throw them in the in the column or inside that football on the little bever football steels, or in the cap on top of your keg steel. If you put like a little wire mesh. They make a wire mesh gasket that fits on the gasket that we were talking about. It's flat on one side, curved on the other. They make that with like a wire mesh, and that'll help keep solids in the cap or help keep solids in the boiler. But if you want to use them inside the cap, you can fill that cap and just put that gasket on there and gently turn it over and place it, and it'll all those rings will fall, but they won't fall through because you've got that gasket there. Just remember that it's on there though when you take the top off of the all to pour out on you. But yeah, just regular copper rings. Anything that introducing copper to the vapor path will give some, something for the sulfides to bond to. I will say using that mesh is very extremely effective because it's got such a large surface area, and you can just roll it up, fit inside that tube. You don't want to pack it real tight, and you don't want to inhibit, flow of vapors, but you can loosely roll up a good roll to fit in your 2 inch tubing, or spools, or in a bag, your brewing bag inside your cap hanging, whatever. You can use them in your thumpers, wherever you want to use them. You just get them in the vapor path, and they'll work pretty well. So yeah, I can't remember what it's called. I'm sure I called it downcomer, but there's a technical term for it. I'm surprised somebody hadn't Googled it for me yet. Um, but yeah, getting into a still like that's pretty easy, and the basics. After that, choosing a still is the first step. Then there's certain things that you're going to have on hand. You're going to want to have a drill and a mud mixer or a paddle to stir with. If you young and you want a good workout, you can sit and stir corn for an hour, or you can buy you a little drill with a mud mixer, and it's so much easier. Um, but there's yeast and some yeast nutrients and little things like that you're going to have to keep in your little work box, keep the box full of all this stuff, keep some yeast in there, keep some yeast nutrients in there, keep you some citric acid in there, because you never know when you're going to need that. And it's nice to have a little triple scale hydrometer to help measure sugars in your washes. Not a necessity, but it helps. There's little tools that help. And if you want to make it a hobby, and want to get into the a little bit more science end of it, you can use those, but it's not a must. You can follow a typical recipe and get a pretty decent product just following a recipe. So anybody that can take a cookbook, can read a cookbook and cook a good meal, can read a recipe and follow some simple instructions and turn out some pretty decent shine. It's not a lot of difference. So it's anybody can do it, man, woman, I guess even child. I did it when I was pretty young, so you know. But yeah, it's pretty easy. Once you get a few of your little tools together, your proofing hydrometer, and tell you what proof it is. Where you can learn to shake it and read a bead. You don't have to have those things. They're not expensive. 10 bucks. I think $12 for one of each. Or a pair, maybe 12, $14 for triple scale and a proofing hydrometer, or get a couple of them for 8, $12. Good to buy them in pairs because they break pretty easily. Um, so just keeping things like that, little tools. You're gonna have to have some decent funnels. Try to stay away from plastics, and if you can, get a decent stainless funnel. little screen strainers, to help strain stuff off is pretty nice to have, or sit on top of your cap when you're pouring stuff in to catch any stray corn kernels or grains that may have come out of your brew bag. Uh, but having something to ferment in, you're going to of course need a vessel to ferment in. There's a lot of big HDPE drums that are considered food grade. Just make sure that they didn't have anything hazardous in them. I know there's a lot of medical stuff that's used that's food grade that you can clean out and use. There's pickle barrels. They take a while to get the pickle flavor out, but that'll work. Make you some pickle shine until that happens. It's all right. Or make some lemonade shine, just something sour until that pickle comes out. So there's ways to get around issues. If you have a problem, you just gotta make it work. So if you have a little bit of a sour uh, new pickle, they make some pickle shine. And that'll be, you can tell, oh yeah, it's that pickle shine I made, and it'll taste really strong pickle because it's coming out of your mash bill. But if you get a shine that's bitter, you can mix it with some lemonade, make it some lemonade shine, lemon cello, whatever you want to call it. So you can take problems and make them work for you. Damn, these little fruit flies. I've got moth and fruit flies. Last week it was with the mayfly. All right, we're going to go to Paleozoic. Forgot. Let me put my glasses on. Oh, I can read off the screen. Yeah, I forgot I was subscribed to this. So I'm glad you subscribed, brother. Opinions on all malt mash to get better body on your liquor, like corn, rye, and wheat, malt, no raw grain. Except for the corn, malt in the corn is great too. If you want to run all malt, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. It is awesome flavor, probably the best of the best. If you run malted corn, malted rye, malted wheat, I mean your diastatic and your conversions are going to be excellent. You're not going to have a lot of, depending on the percentages, of course, but you're not going to have a lot of, liquid amylase or high temp or amylase powder and glucose to get to finish it. I'd still add a little bit of glucose there at the end to make sure everything gets broken down into fermentables. But yeah, it's definitely the way to go, and that way you don't have to add sugar. You can get all the sugars in the mash from the conversion of the starches in your grains. Knowing your temperatures though, and following your temperature chart. Let me see if I got that handy. Yeah. Also, last week we were talking about rice. So I did a little bit of research on the rice, and we'll discuss that once we address all these other questions. But I'm trying to some time. I'm looking for this. I need to create me a little folder that keeps everything in it. Got stuff all over the place. But yeah, here we go. So you have these charts. This is a good little chart here to tell you what temperature to add what grain. So this, except corn, we do corn way on up here to gelatinize it because we know it takes a long time and it takes high temperature. So it's talking about small granules of your corn. You can take all the way up to 200. I'll roll and boil mine and dump it on the corn. Not malted though. When you're talking about malted corn, that's going to be a different beast. You're going to have to step mash, and you're going to have to, if you're going to gelatinize your corn, I would recommend, instead of running a malt corn with that all grain or all malt like you're talking about, I would recommend doing maybe a flake corn with it. Reason being, it's already gelatinized, and you don't have to go through the gelatination process. If you gelatinize a malted corn, you have to do a very, very long, tedious gelatinization. You have to do it at a temperature that's low enough not to denature your enzymes that are in the corn, the malted corn. So, you're going to have to be at a pretty low temperature not to denature those alpha enzymes or any of your enzymes in your malted corn. So if you're gonna rely on any diastatic from your corn, which doesn't have a whole lot, it's not enough to convert itself, but there is some, and if you want to utilize that, you're going to have to go for a really long cook time to gelatinize your corn, and then you let it cool off, of course, and you'll add your barley malt at about 155 right here. See, and this is in your saccharification range. So this is when a lot of your starches are going to be turning into sugars and converting. This is a rest period that you want to take no matter what you do, from 155 to 145. You want to, when your mash is cooling down, you want to kind of hold that temperature range for an extended period, especially if you're using malts. Um, and there's protein rests as well if you want to make those. Beer makers, utilize those a lot more. But here's your malted barley malt, wheat. It doesn't say malted wheat, but you're going to treat this about the same. And your rye is a little cooler, so you're going in at 145 down to 110 with your rye. So you're just going to add these individually as you go. Um, but I would start. I'd use a flake corn though instead of a malted corn, simply because it's gelatinized and it'd be a lot easier on you, a lot less tedious and time consuming. But not saying you can't do it, but it's just going to take 6, 8, 10 hours to gelatinize your corn at 160 some degrees, so you don't denature the enzymes in it, right? So 165, 170 degrees, you know, maybe 6, 8 hours. It's quite a lot longer cook time. That's why we impatiently, go in at a boiling temp and do it for about an hour and a half, and try to maintain that 190 to 210 range for an hour and a half, to gelatinize the corn a lot quicker. If you're not depending on the enzymes in the corn, you're just stripping starch. That's really, the best way to do it. Um, the cheapest way too, if you don't want to use flake, because that flake corn is a little bit expensive, but in the flaking process, it's steamrolled, and when they go through that steamroller, they get flattened and heated, and they gelatinize almost instantly because it's a really, really hot temperature. And when it flattens them out and steams them, it almost instantly gelatinizes them. So those are really good. They're really good to use, and they have good flavor. So I would definitely recommend just using like a flaked corn, and then the rest malts, and I think you'll be pretty happy with your product. And there's lots of different malts to experiment with. That's one of the beauties of distilling and trying different things and trying different malts. I will say, a lot of your darker malts and a lot of your specialty malts tend to be really strongly flavored. So I would say kind of start on the low side and work your way up, to where you get the full body flavor that you're looking for, because they can easily, especially like the chocolate malts and some of those darker malts, can easily get overpowering if you use like more than 5 percent. Some people use 10. They're like, too much. It's just too much. So start low with those, and work your way down. Yeah, that's definitely what you want to work towards, though, buddy. You definitely want to work towards doing an all grain, and it's nice to have a little dextrose on hand. That way, if your conversions, if something goes wrong, you don't get everything converted. You're coming out with a 1050 or something like that, and you want to bump it up to a 1060 at least, or 1070. You can throw a little dextrose in there to help it out, and it's not gonna affect your profile as if you use like a beet sugar or something like that. So, um, but just to bump it up, not have a whole lot, just to help bump it up. Yeah, that certainly helps. Yeah, yeah, I would just get some of that copper mesh off Amazon. Make sure you get it off a reputable seller. Read the feedback. If somebody says, "Oh, this is copper plated steel," run. Don't get it. It's worst when you get it in the mail. put a magnet on it. If it kind of sticks to it or tracks it, wrap it back up, send it back. Let them, put them out of business because they sell out. They say it's pure copper, and a lot of times it's copper plated steel, and that shit'll rust in one run. I mean, it's nasty. It's horrible. Don't do it. But a good mesh, I recommend probably the most. It's easy to use. It's cheap. Roll it up. You once you get done with it, rinse it out, dry it out. Once it gets green, if it starts getting a lot of oxides and stuff on it, you can set it down in some vinegar, and water, and let it, kind of work it out, and then rinse it, and scrub it if you have to, and that works out pretty well until it's not good anymore, and then you just pitch it, or you can use it to, like if you do any furniture work or stuff like that. It's good for scraping off old finishes and stuff like that. If you got some paint removers and things like that, you're removing old paint, things like that. It's good, to use those on the wood as well. So you can get a few uses out of them for different things before you pitch them. Or you could just, it's copper, so you can just throw it in the recycle bin, and I guess they'll try to recycle it. If not, they can deal with it. Yeah, the mesh isn't. It's not real expensive. It's cheap, and it comes in rolls. Uh, I can't remember who I bought mine last off of. It was on Amazon, but yeah, there's a lot of good ones on there that carry it. I got some fresh okra pickle today. Awesome, brother. That's just what Damon wants to hear. You should send Damon a jar of those, man. He loves them. So the sugar turned out pretty well. Yeah, I mean you know, I wish my first shine would have been that. My first shine was cornmeal, sugar, and water, and I scorched it and cooking it, and I think I scorched it the first 2 or 3 times I cooked it. I was young and dumb, and it was horrible, but we drank it anyway. We're tickled to death, it's giddy, and thought we was cool. Something else, man, making. But I learned, the hard way, and things got better. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with a good old sugar shine every once in a while, man. If it's winter time, it's hard to get good fresh grains, and no fresh fruit around, and you out of liquor, and you just need something. You got a party coming up, you wanted to make something, especially like you say, post flavoring. Hell yeah, I'm writing you a little sugar shine. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, some people, I mean, once you start doing all grain though, and start doing brandies, and some good, really good stuff, and cranking out some good quality shine, you'll tend to kind of get away from the sugar shines. But every once in a while you'll catch yourself just like, man, I just need some damn liquor. I'm out of liquor. I need something. I got something coming up. You know, I just so it's always nice to be able to do that when you have to, when you're in a pinch, when you're in a hurry, you need something, or like I say, just post flavoring. We want to make some you know pickle shine, or any kind of little post flavored shine, apple pie, whatever. You can you get you a little column for your keg, and that's the beauty of the kegs and the beverage and these. It's versatile. You can put different attachments to the top. You put your little whiskey head in there, a little horse head, and run your brandies and whiskeys, or you can buy a nice little column with some sight glasses and maybe some little scrubbers in there and bubble plates, and make you a little column still out of it to strip some flavors out when you do, when you want some high proof vodkas and neutral flavors. You can do it for your rums, your vodkas, your tequilas, and kind of, well, not so much tequila. There's good flavors in that. I've done that more like a whiskey, but like a high proof rum or a high proof vodka that you're going to run neutral and then flavor. Yeah, it's works out great. Yeah, I know the downcombers. Yeah, bubble plates, and also in your and your thumpers. But I'm trying to think of what they call the spike that goes down in the keg that you remove to convert a keg into a steel. Spear. Yeah, there you go. Spike, spear. Yeah, that's the term I was looking for. Thanks, brother. Awesome. Yeah, I when I can't think of it, I just call it a downcomer because that's kind of the same principle. But yeah, spear is the word I was looking for. Appreciate you, brother. That's good. Yeah, if you let it finish real dry, and because sugar will, it'll finish real dry if you use a normal amount and you have a decent yeast. It'll usually finish out pretty dry, and it can affect the flavor. But if you stop it right at one or just a little over 1.000, it'll help it from getting dry, and it's not bad. I mean, especially for your first time, it's something. Damn, that's not bad. That's something I can fucking drink, man. I can get used to that, and it's perfectly fine, especially like mixing drinks and flavoring. It's awesome, man. It's not gonna top a good, white dog made with, 3 or 4 grains or whatever, and not all conversion and no sugar, but it's good, and it's just like, damn, I made that, and it gives you a good feeling. It gives you a sense of accomplishment, and turning out something it's easy to do, and it's all learning and improving and and mastering the craft from here on up. You've got it figured out. You know how to do the mash, and you know how to add a little nutrients. You know how to keep the pH kind of buffered. You know what pH you want to start at, and so you're learning, and then you start getting different recipes, and start adding fruits, and converting grains, and using amylase to convert grains, and you know it's just sky's the limit from here. So there's so many different things that you can do. It's an awesome hobby. You don't have to get in a hurry anytime you do anything. uh, so the sugar washes work off pretty quickly, so uh, they're awesome. It's a great place to start. And sense of accomplishment. You and your buddies can sit around, drink it, and spit it in the fire, and watch the flame blow up, and talk about how high octane, and proof it down, and make a pretty decent little drink out of it. Yeah, yeah, it makes a great neutral for adding flavors. Yeah, yeah, they are. They definitely are rich, very rich, and tasty. There you go. What's going on, Mikey? Yeah, I like a lot of all grains, but I've been doing a lot of brandies. I used to do grains was my thing, and I was definitely made some good whiskey, but I've been getting into a lot of brandies the last 8, 10 years. And winemaking, I'm getting into winemaking and brandies. Yeah, hey, that's a good point. When you're making a white dog and you're not aging it, you really have to have a better spirit than what usually typically goes into a barrel. We were talking last week about barrels, and barrels will add 60 to 80% of the flavor of a whiskey or a bourbon. So that 20 to 40% is all you. That's how you make your whiskey or bourbon unique, is what you do with that 20 to 40. So if you can make a really high quality white dog, you can make a really really high quality bourbon or liquor. But actually making a white dog is a lot more difficult, because um, most people are attuned, I guess, to whiskey and bourbon flavors. They're just not used to the taste of ethanol coming off the still as a white dog unless they drink a lot of shine. So it's a different drink, and it tastes different. So if you can make a real quality high, white dog, you almost have to make it drinkable at that stage. But you'd be surprised what a lot of these whiskey makers white dog tastes like. You probably would say, that's not a very good, shine or a white dog. But after 4 years in a barrel, it's like that's pretty good whiskey. So it does help a lot. Those barrels help a whole lot. Yeah, stick would have to get it hot. Yeah. Now it's not yeah, definitely with the sticks. It's hard to bend those things. I mean, I've heard people packing them with sand and capping them off with water in them, pressurized and I've heard a lot of different things. It's so much easier just to buy a box of rolled copper. Just don't don't put yourself through all that heating it up. Just the difference in the waste of the gas to heat it up to bend it will make up the difference in what it'll cost to buy a box as opposed to a stick. Actually, it might even just be cheaper that way. But you had 20 foot, yeah, 15 to 20 feet on a 5 gallon worm. That'd be fine. For a keg steel, 15's fine. If you got up to like 20 feet, would definitely take you up to probably a 40 gallon steel or higher. So um, that's why it's kind of good to overdo it to start with. Do a 20 footer or 25, ever how big, or maybe something taller. That way, no matter what size keg you run in the future, um, it's gonna be plenty of worm for it. I've never heard anybody say you have too much worm. It's just, it'll condense and then at the other point it'll just come out, as a drip. So I'm sure there's some people say you waste money, but it's just upgradable. That's the way I see it. I Congratulations, brother, on your first run. There's nothing, I remember my first run. I was a kid, man. I was so proud, and I know how it feels, man. You'll never forget that first run, man. You'll never forget that first drink. And so save some of that, save that jar first run and put your bottle of wine, get your wine bottle, fill it up and label it and put it away and store it, or, you know, that'll be something that you want to hold on to. I didn't on mine. We drank it. Yeah. Yeah. You can use marbles. That works just the same. You can use them on the bottom. Yep. You can use them on the bottom to help any of the if you put in like a milky mash, you don't let it sit and clear totally, and it's milky, or if you pump it, if when you try to pump it up, it stirs up some sediments and stuff. You really don't want to do that, but if you do, having those marbles in the bottom will help prevent it from scorching. I know when it gets hot, they'll kind of move around, bubbling at the bottom, and they'll move around and keep things, uh, disturbed, I guess you could say, at the bottom, so it doesn't turn to sediment. One thing you really don't want to do is pour your mash in your steel and then walk away for a few hours and then come back and light it up, because all that sediments, and especially if it's milky. If it's clear, it's not going to be a big issue. But if it's milky, you get some stuff settling. And if you go away, it's going to form a little film on the bottom, and then you crank that heat up, it will scorch. So make sure if you do stir it, stir it, stir it. And I usually let mine clear and get pretty clear. Um, it might have color, like my brandies will look like wine, but they'll have a good clarity and clear. Um, Grains will be milky. They're not perfectly clear. They're kind of milky. But I rack mine off with a siphon. That way I don't disturb the yeast bed and all that flocculence and stuff at the bottom. Need a drink. little peach brandy. But drop your tube down in there and keep it about an inch, above that yeast bed, and just rack everything off by suction, and it doesn't disturb a lot of stuff. And that way you can rack it all into a secondary fermentation if you want to do that with your brandy, or you can rack it directly into your still. But dropping a pump in there, it'll stir up your yeast bed, and it'll affect the flavor of your distillate. You don't want a lot of that in there. So siphoning it off is a good way. If you've got one of those pumps that sits outside and it just sucks and then discharges, that type is okay. But one of those submersible type pumps, that'll stir shit up. Um, so I generally just siphon. I'm not in that big a hurry, and I don't have, you know, hundreds of gallons to do. I know if you got a big, huge, 500-gallon vat or thousands of gallons, you're basically going to have a little drain at the bottom that you can open up, and your yeast bed gets sucked out right off the bat. Turn it off, and then rack it off the top all the way down, and that works pretty well for the big guys. But yeah, the little pot that they send for a worm is it's okay to do your first couple few runs with it, just learning how and all that, but you definitely going to upgrade that. I tend to go with, I like the football steels. Um, they've got that ferrule on the top of the lid that makes it really so versatile. You can add, like we were talking earlier, you can add a column, you can add a horse head, you can just add an elbow and go straight into your condenser, every how you want to run it. And it makes it very convertible. Same with a keg, uh, or a copper steel. If you put that ferrule on the top, you can run it, do it the same way. But yeah, you definitely want to get away from the little pot, the little thumper pot they send, slobber box thumper, nah, and the little condenser that they send with that as well. Nah, you know, basically when you buy those 3-pot beverage, just get a 2-pot or a 1-pot. You know, forget the other stuff. If you can get it cheaper, get it without that. Um, Basically, what you're buying is a good stainless steel boiler with a claspable lid with a gasket with a hole in it. That's basically what you're buying. So you can take that hole, you can enlarge it, and run larger copper pipe to improve things. You can get a bulkhead fitting and put a ferrule on there, or you can take somebody that welds and have them TIG on a ferrule, or braze a stainless ferrule to the top of it. And those work really well. You get an 1.5 inch, 2 inch tube coming off there. You get quite a bit of vapor. It works faster, with, I guess, less velocity that a smaller one, kind of pushes through. Whereas a larger one, you get a little bit more dwell time on, like, your copper mesh and things of that nature. And on your bubble plates, you get a little bit more dwell time to help remove sulfides and increase proof, and to get rid of some of the water for reflux. So um, definitely helps a lot. Yep. Yes, sir. That'll work. Yeah, I always just took it to the old car wash and sprayed it out. It never got real bad, but you kind of got to hit it at angles, and you never really get it all cleaned out. And after it gets grungy, you can always just get another keg. Just trade that in and get another keg. And then I'd have to put another spear in it. Try to remember spear, spike, downcomer, spear. Yeah, getting old and forgetful, brother. Yeah, yeah, they definitely need to upgrade their worms for sure. And that's the biggest downfall really of those pots is the gaskets that are on the pot itself are kind of brittle, and if you over tighten it, which people tend to do, they feel that this is a steel generally with a typical thumper and not a whole lot of jar rigs, like one or two jar rigs or a thumper. You're only going to develop like 3 to 5 psi inside the steel. So you're not really dealing with explosive force unless it has nowhere to go. If you get a clog in it from fruit, from putting, the lid down on a thumper, and you got a downcomer like we were talking about coming down, and you spear a pear or something like that or an apple and clog it up, you could have an explosion very easily. So that's why I always recommend anybody using fruits puree it. That way you don't have to worry about a grape getting stuck in your half-inch copper, which is about the perfect size to get stuck, and raspberries for 3/8. It's just you can bypass a lot of risk by pureeing everything that you use for infusion. And if you want to put an elbow on that down comber when it comes down, put an elbow uh, in the bottom of your thumper. That way, when you do set that lid down on your thumper, if it's one that has a lid, you won't spike some fruit and force it up the down comber and run a risk of explosion. But it'll build up pressure, and if it's close to the bottom, it can't blow it out of there. And yeah, it can get explosive. It's happened, and people die. So hot boiling alcohol is not something that you want all over you, and especially if you have an open flame running it. So there are dangers involved. Keep a fire extinguisher handy. Always blow before you make a run. Always blow through your worm. Make sure that because that thing sits out in the storage building all winter and all spring, or it might be a while since you run. We've seen what mud daubers can do. Some bitches get in there and build them a little mud daub nest, and next thing you know, it's packed full of dirt. And it won't blow out. That can explode. So make sure that you know your gaskets are good. Make sure that everything's clear, and it's a little walk around like getting ready to fly a plane. You just gotta do the walk around, make sure you test everything, fill your gaskets, make sure everything's in place. When it first starts, steaming up on you, make sure you don't have any steam leaks anywhere. You can get a little mirror and, you know, cosmetic mirror and go around some of your, tri clamps, making sure that they're all clamped in good and you don't have any little leaks. You might need to tighten it up a little bit more. At the end of your worm, you can put a little mirror there to see if you got a lot of gases coming out that's not cool. So if it's not getting cool enough. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to make sure that it's going to be a safe. Because safety is the most important thing. Doing it safe and having safe, successful runs. That's awesome, man. Yeah, you definitely got to upgrade that worm. Let's go on, Johan. But it's just all natural, man. I don't trim it. I don't cut it. I don't. I do have some beard wash stuff I use every couple of weeks or so. It I don't know. It ain't horse and mane or nothing like that. I can't remember the name of it. Damon said it's some pretty good stuff. I can't remember what the name of it is, but I my old lady gets it for me at where she works, and she likes the smell of it. And I like the way it does pretty well. But I don't do nothing, man. I just let it let my freak flag fly, baby. Yeah, he loves his pickled okra, man. That's his favorite. Uh-oh. I'm glad he said that. I'll try me some of this wheated Bloody Butcher Sour Mash. Number 4. Not the select. I never did check the proof on this. I'm gonna do that I'm going to show you guys how to check proof. Yeah. That's me falling over the wet and dry back. All right, so a good graduated cylinder is a must. You can get the plastic silicone ones that work well. I like having the glass ones until they get shit in them like that. I don't know what the hell that is or how it got there, but I guarantee you this liquor will take it out of there. I never did proof this to see what it is. I shook it and I guessed it to be around 120 to 30, but I never set it down. Yeah, I never did put it to the hygrometer. So let's see. I'm guessing 130. These damn things. Oh. Well, I wasn't too far off. My shake test, I caught 130. It's actually 135. So that's pretty damn good for shaking. And I don't know if I can teach everybody my secrets on shaking and reading beads and frog eyes and all that good stuff. But there's on higher proof stuff, it's pretty easy to check. But when you get below 190 and 100 proof, and you get more water than alcohol, it gets considerably more difficult. But yeah, having these are very handy. It's a must, but the plastic ones generally are the ones you want to get because these glass ones are more expensive and they break. I'll leave this out. I keep it in that bubble right there. That way, if it falls over, it doesn't break on me. But yeah, it's about 135. I guess 130. I went too far off. I know you are, Damon. Oak Creek's a fool, man. Damon loves his oak. Especially a snotty, slimy, man. It can't get snotty enough for him. What's up, brother? Hello, Mama B. Yes, everybody's been saying, where in the hell's Mama B at? So your ears must have been burning. So how's Mama B today? 6.5 pounds of flake corn, 2 pounds of malted 6-row. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be fine. That's 8.5. That's about 9. So that's about 3 to 4 gallons. You add 4 gallons of water to that. So if you have a 5-gallon still, that'd be about right. Get you 4 gallons, maybe a little bit more corn, and bump it up to 5. That way you can squeeze it all out. So you're always going to lose that gallon, and stuff that you don't want to have to press out and get all that, and just leave it in there and do it for like a sour mash and carry it over. That's what I always try to do, and it saves you a lot of time trying to. I used to just let it hang in a bag from a ladder over a bucket and let it drip all night. That works fine if you're not in a hurry. You let it sit in a brew bag or grain bag and drip. And then I got the mop wringer. Bought me a new mop wringer, and that works really well too. What's going on, Kevin? That works really well too. So either of those, to help strain. But even after you do that, you want to kind of let it sit and settle, because you're going to have a lot of, yeast and stuff in there when you press it all out. And so, put it in a secondary, I call it secondary ferment. Just put it in another vessel once you get all that squeezed off, and and then let it settle down to where you can see your yeast bed, and then use the siphon, like I was talking about, and siphon that off. Definitely the way to go. But yeah, that sounds like a perfect little combo. And the 6 row has a little better diastatic power than your 2 row. Um, but if you have some liquid enzymes, you know, it wouldn't hurt to just use half of what you normally would, just to kind of get things going. With flake corn, it's probably going to be less of an issue because you're gelatinized and you really don't have to worry about the thick and dealing with all the thick. You can just heat it up to the barley adding temp, add your barley, and at that point, I like to, on a this mash like that, when it gets down to yeast pitch and temps, I like to add some glucose as well. I know that the malt has beta amylase in it, which is a endogenous enzyme, and that works really, really well. But adding an exogenous with a little liquid glucose at the end to make sure that all those fermentables, get broken down, all those sugars get broken down into fermentables, certainly helps a lot. And if you want to start inching into doing a 2 row, which generally carries more flavor, and makes for better beers, and whiskeys. You can start using a little bit more of your liquid enzymes, exogenous enzymes like your high temp alpha liquid, and then add your 2 row for more for flavor than diastatic. So you can kind of experiment. You don't have to worry about if you're getting enough. You can more concern yourself with flavor profiles, and be more concerned with flavor, and then just use those liquid glucose and liquid high temp alpha, and couple that with a 2 row, and start playing with those, and you can dial it in. You can add more malt, less liquid in exogenous enzymes, or maybe if it's a little too malty, you can add more liquid enzymes and a little less malt, or go with a 2 row and maybe a little honey malt to boost some flavor. There's just so many, and then you got malt extracts and LME and all that to work with. So there's just so many things you can experiment with and do, and there's no right or wrong. It's just making sure that you get enough diastatic power and making sure all your starches get converted is, the right thing. So, you're not going to be wrong with different percentages. Um, Until you had a whole bunch of dark, and then it's like, holy shit, that's too much. Uh, yeah, that happens. A lot of people get carried away with that dark malt, and they like the flavor, and they think a little bit's good, a whole lot's even better. Doesn't work out that way always. Safety last. I figured Toby would be the one to say something like that. Just run it. What's going on, Toby? Yeah, exactly. Do your pre-trip, walk around it, check everything, and when it starts heating up, make sure you don't have any leaks. Don't take anything for granted. Don't walk away while it's warming up. Pay attention to what's going on. And I know it's hard to say and hard to do, but try not to drink too much while you're distilling. You need to keep your wits about you, and be able to, something happens, you got to be able to think quick, turn that gas off first, open it up, making sure, you don't implode, get the gas turned off, first thing. Anything ever happens, your open flame, that's got to be the first thing. Just naturally, boom, get to that gas, shut it off, shut it off. Any problems that you ever have, shut it off. Because you can always turn it back on and warm it back up. It's not going to hurt anything. So that's another beauty about distilling is if you screw something up and it just doesn't taste good, you can always put it on that column with the bubble plates and strip the flavor off. Or you can run it again. Maybe you got some puking over that made it. Maybe it's just the color was bad. Maybe there's a lot of different things that could have happened. And maybe you can mix it with the next mash and it work out better, and maybe you could just dump it with all those tails you've been saving, and do another run. And so unless you scorch it, if you scorch it, I generally, don't even fool with it. You can try to make it better, um, but it's never going to be just right, especially if you get a pretty good scorch on things. So best just to clean it all up as best you can. Use that as a learning lesson, and whatever came out, maybe make a grass killer out of, or but I don't even think a lot of animals would like to eat it after it's scorched like that. It's horrible. What's going on, Chris? What was rude? Did I miss something? Oh no, about my beard? Hell no, brother. I can't go anywhere, man. People ask me about my beard, so I'm used to it, man. Yes, sir. That's what I'm drinking right now. Is a little sour mash, and I tell you what, uh, Bloody Butcher. That first time, a lot of people don't like it because of the oils and the earth notes and the oiliness that you get. But if you sour mash it, you're basically getting a lot of that out the first run, and subsequent runs pretty damn good. So um, if you get some Bloody Butcher and you're not really fond of it on the first run, um, make a sour mash, and it's good. I like it. What's going on, Mitch? What's up, brother? What's up, Toby? Awesome. So what you running a 5 gallon? It just depends on how much water you add, Jeff. That's why I was trying to figure out. 6.5 and 2, that's 8.5, almost 9. So if you do 3 pounds per gallon, that's 3 gallons. If you do 2.5, it's getting close to 4, and you'd have 10. So if you can bump the corn up a little bit, I'm not sure, how big a still that you're running, but um, Jimmy Red, the Bloody Butcher. Yeah, Jimmy Red's it doesn't have as much oil. It's for the red, white, and blues. I prefer the Jimmy Red too, but they're both good corns. And I'll tell you, that sour mash in that Bloody Butcher is pretty good. How much heads would you pour off a 5 gallon still? So you got if it's a 5 gallon still, you're probably running 3.5 gallons. Or are you talking about a steel that you can run 5 gallons? It's actually more like 7 or 8 because different people advertise their steels different ways. Some people advertising it how much it'll hold if you fill it all the way to the very tippy top, which is not the way you're supposed to do it. Some of them measure the volume to the bottom of the cape, which is how you should do it. Um, so if your steel is measured to the tippy top, then you're going to be running 3.5 gallons. If it's measured to the top of the cake, then you'll probably be running 5. So that's something that's important to learn right off the bat is the size, exact size, because advertised and what you end up getting sometimes, you think, oh, I got a 12-gallon steel, and you start adding water to it, and it's like 9 gallons. It's like, wait, and the dude that built it's like, well, I followed the pattern. It said this, and then you find out that it's a little bit smaller than the pattern or whatever, but you can only run, 9 in that 12-gallon, because it's 12 to the top measure. So it's important to figure out how, and it depends on the distillate. So if you've got like a brandy, you're going to tend to have more heads than you would if you had a grain, and your grain is going to have more heads than you would if you had, like a sugar wash. Sugar washes really don't have a lot of heads, and fours, um, especially four shots, because you don't have a lot of methanol coming from just a straight sugar, because there's not a lot of cellulose or plant material that are being converted into alcohol, which is a wood based alcohol. That's just what methanol is. And that's basically from converting a lot of the cellulose from the plant matter in fruits and grains. Um, yeah, yeah. The Bloody Butcher's really good sour mash. Just ask Jeff. That's right, brother. Yes, sir. Awesome, awesome. So, Jeff, how many gallons is your still? And we can work on that mash bill a little bit. Oh, well, I'm on here. Let me see if I can find that little mash bill. Oh, hang on it. I'm gonna have to get organized on my PC. I had OneDrive. What happened was I had OneDrive and I got so many damn files. Fucking Microsoft wanted to charge me for OneDrive, so I'm like, fuck that. So I turned OneDrive off, and now I had to move all my files to another place, and it's just they're all over the fucking place, and it's pissed me off. I should have just moved all my pictures over and left a lot of my info files, but I've got thousands of different distilling files in there that a lot of pictures that take up a lot of space. And I'm trying to find mash bills. Oh, I put it on it's on the malicious file section, and in the DIY, it's in the file section there too. And it's just mash bills, but it shows mash bills from all your. I can search for that some bitch. I'll find it. I have to do the file search thing here, and it's coming up with nothing there. So let's just search all. Well, shit. Maybe I need to. I'll find it. Well, that's not it. Yes, I know it's a PDF. Shit, could have probably just gone to the damn list page and pull it off there. Let me do that real quickly. So I know it's in the file section there. I can find it pretty quickly there and bring it back in. So if you don't know, on the Moonshine Militia page and on the DIY Shine and Stuff page, at the very top, you'll see where it has the name, then it'll have private group, and then the number of members, and then below that it'll have all these people. And it says discussion, featured, members, events, media, files. If you click on files, we've got quite a few files in here. And let me see, I'm going to download that again. And let's put it in. Okay, downloads be perfect. Perfect. There it is. Okay, so but files there, we got quite a few files. We're going to be adding some more. Hopefully we can get some of Phil Billy's recipes. Um, get somebody to help him type up and do some recipes. I've got a bunch of recipes as well to put in there, so that should be pretty fun to do. But let me find this now. Let's see. Oh, that's why I was going. Damn, no wonder I couldn't find it. I was trying to. There. Anyway, here we go. So here's some different mash bills. I don't know how well y'all can see that. If you're on your phones, probably not going to be able to see it very well. But it's called Mash Dash Bills Dash 2.02. So this is basic mash bills, and some of them are not available. Some of them are still secret and stuff. But I mean, you've got Eagle Rare, you've got George T. Stagg mash bills. So basically, all the different combinations and grain bills that they use for a lot of high-end liquor. You can follow these ratios, and uh, and you're going to get a pretty good you're going to get a pretty good base to start with. Now, is it going to taste just like theirs? Probably not. But if you put it in that barrel for 4 years, it may be better. Because there's one thing that these big distilleries can't do that we do, and that's have a tighter hands-on control over our mash in different cuts, tighter cuts, um, and the ability to add and infuse. It's tough for them to do that. So we have a little bit more control over what we do as a craft distiller and as a small distiller. Um, so you can make some pretty good top shelf stuff. Once you get everything down and learn it and start getting barrels and new barrels and getting chars and number three char with yeah, with your white oak barrels, you can start cranking out some stuff that competes or surpasses some of the finest stuff you can get on the shelf, man. That's the goal. But that file's in there too for anybody that wants that. Um, 4 gallon. Okay, yeah, perfect. So yeah, that actually the one you had there with 3 gallons of water will be perfect. You might do about three and a half because you're gonna of course leave some behind, but that should be perfect, brother. I appreciate it, Lisa. I grabbed it. It was my fault when I was presenting it. I clicked on image and not slides and PDFs like an idiot. That's why it wasn't showing up when I was I was in the right place, but I had image instead of PDF. So yeah, it helps to do that. Yeah, Clint's right on the nail on the head. Yeah, 2.5 to 3 pounds. If you get a good conversion, you shouldn't need any sugar at all. And actually, Mike Frey and I, a lot of people don't know, Mike Frey is commercial distilling. He's a legal distiller. And he and I spent some time, doing some calculations on cost to make basically just a shine with some sugar versus using corn in conversion. And time, wasn't a factor. Just the cost of everything that you're doing. It's very close, very very close. And if you're getting corn at a really good price, like you would if you were commercial or a larger scale home distiller, I should say, um, or if you're going to Bucky's to get it for 8 something a 50 pound bag, they got a good deal at Bucky's on your yellow dent, like 8 something for a 50 pound, excuse me, 50 pound bag. It's more. My throat's getting a little parched. Yeah, it's a little smoother than that 135, I'd say. That 100 proof brandy is sweet. Um, but yeah, Bucky's has 850 or something like that, 890, maybe 850, 880, something, or 580, or 8 something, I think. Yeah, $8 and something for a 50 pound bag. It's pretty cheap. So if you can get your corn that cheap and get a good conversion, you can literally get more sugar from that at a cheaper cost than buying bags of sugar at like 70 cents a pound. So And, of course, if you're doing commercial, you're going to be getting sugar probably cheaper than that as well. But there's a reason that all these ethanol producers use corn instead of sugar, is because corn is a cheaper method to create ethanol than sugar is, and it makes it better. So uh, corn is the way. That yellow dent, man, is the bomb. Yep, absolutely. Especially the smoothness. That sugar adds a little bite to it. That if you don't have it in there, you're not going to get that bite. Also, um, if you're using like a dextrose, you won't get as much of a bite as you would like a regular table sugar or a beet sugar, especially. So, what's going on, Randy? How are you, brother? That's awesome, brother. I heard your strawberries turned out real well. I heard you got quite a bit of strawberries. I look forward to trying some at Brandy and wine. You gonna leave some wine, make some wine, and leave it that way as well. I've got some. I've got strawberry champagne, and it's basically a sparkling wine, And the gals at the bar, they save me bottles, wine bottles, and bottles, and I take them some of that strawberry champagne. They love it, shit, man. It's real dry and it's just like a champagne, real bubbly. They eat that shit up, man. They love it. So if you haven't tried that, give her a try. Just save some out to the side and let it ferment extra dry and don't degas it, don't kill it off, and bottle that shit up, and it'll make a pretty good little sparkling wine. Yeah, yeah. Generally around here, I found that I think 70 cents is about the average or cheapest you're going to get it, like at a box store, like a Kroger or Walmart or something like that. I think about 70 cents a pound is pretty average price. So that's that's about the cheapest I get it. You can find it a little bit cheaper, I guess. I know um, Philbilly and yeah, I'm just looking at your video there of you planting your corn there, Randy. Now that looks like a mix. Is that like a Amanda Palmer you got there, or what do you got? What'd you plant, brother? Mass grain, bull spreadsheet. Awesome. Yeah, there's some decent grain bills out there, calculators that work your diastatic, and they tell you just exactly, what kind of malt, how much malt. If you tell it, how much corn, what type, and they're very handy, very very handy. Yeah, they can make some pretty hot liquor, but you can make a decent strawberry brandy without it being real hot. The thing about strawberries is they're not as sweet as what you would think they are. I mean, when you eat them, they taste kind of sweet, but a lot of people dip them in sugar because they're not real sweet. They're kind of tart, and on the fruit chart, they're not really way up there on the fruit chart. It's you'll see strawberries right down here at the bottom, brother. 5.8, so they're not real sweet at all. So if you're using your hydrometer and you're trying to get a decent volume of liquor come off, you're going to add quite a bit of sugar to it, to get it up there to where you need it. So You know, some of these, I mean, it's just, twice as much sugar as a lemon, but less than a grapefruit. Think about that. Strawberries have less sugar than a freaking grapefruit. Think about that. And this is per 100 grams of fruit. How many grams of it's sugar? So, yeah, strawberries just aren't as sweet as people think they are, and you tend to add more sugar. So when you distill it, you really need to do it like a true brandy and have more water coming off. You don't want it coming off at a high proof, because it's going to have that bite. So if you can have more water coming off and have it coming off at lower proof with more of that strawberry flavor, that's definitely going to work in your favor. And if you have jar rigs and you're running uh, some of that sweetened syrup, strawberry syrup puree stuff that they use for making daiquiris with, like the daiquiri mix, makes a pretty good infusion for strawberries. Dailies, I think, is one of my more favorite ones. Has little rings. Um, it makes a pretty good infusion. Got real chunks, and you can add some sweetness to it, and that way you can, come off with a pretty sweet strawberry flavorful brandy. I know Randy makes some, or Hydro Man makes some pretty good strawberry shine from what I heard. I haven't tried it yet, but I've talked to quite a few people that's tried it, and they've all said it was really good. So I look forward to trying some of that. But yeah, if you do it right, it can not be hot and be pretty flavorful. But yeah, if you do it your first time and you don't know what to look out for and add too much sugar, yeah, it can get pretty hot pretty quick for sure. Absolutely right. And the same for a lot of these down here. My plum, I do a plum slivovich, and it gets a little bit of sugar mixed with it, and it's not too hot. I do it the same way with the brandy. Trying to get more water and less proof coming off. Um, so any of these, basically watermelon on down, can tend to be a little bit on the hot side. Then you get into apricots, pomegranates, raspberry, peaches, and everything. So, and I don't even see peach. There's peach. Okay. So peach up, is pretty good flavor wise. You're not going to get a lot of flavor carrying over for stuff like a watermelon, maybe kiwi, probably pears don't carry over very well. Where does one find one of these building spreadsheets? You can Google. Oh, are you talking about the templates for the steel? Carl, if you're talking about the templates for the steel, I uploaded those to the DIY page and DIY Shine and Stuff page and in the militia. So if you go to the files in the militia, let me check them real quick so I can tell you what it's called. Um, it's probably going to be at the top. Look at the latest ones. It's a PDF called the Pot Steel, and that's got some schematics and some drawings and a little bit more of a how-to. And then right underneath that, it's got copper pot steel design plan 12-gallon template. And you can take that 12-gallon template and you can scale it up, so to make a 20, 30, 40, 50, just keep scaling it up because everything is just done to scale. So, and it's easy to scale up. If you have, like an overhead projector or something that you can, pretty much put this template on the wall on some cardboard or something like that you can trace out the cardboard templates. You can make some, decent templates with cardboard or poster board. I've seen people just take sheet metal, just cheap old flat sheet metal and make their templates out of that so they last a little bit longer and, than paper. But they do real well too to trace the lines and drawing everything out. So if you can make them out of like some scrap sheet metal, if you got some sheet metal laying around, um, you can make your templates out of that. And hell, if you want to, you can practice on sheet metal, bending it and working with it, and then make a little sheet metal steel and throw it away, or just paint it copper and let it sit on the shelf. Something look pretty, but don't use it. You don't want to use that kind of metal, but they make good templates. But yeah. Oh, that's fine, brother. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were talking about the mash bill spreadsheet calculator we were talking about earlier, but yeah, that's and there's some other ones on there too in Google. You can just Google pot still template. But one thing I definitely recommend doing is instead of coming up and doing the paste, come up and have it fit either a 4 or a 2 inch ferrule. If it's a smaller one, 2 should be fine. You get much above 20 and you want to be able to get your arm in there to scrub it, you're going to have a 4 at least. Um, I can't get my arm in a 3, so a 4 is pretty tight. So um, if you want to be able to get in there and scrub stuff down, I've seen people put even larger, 8 inch. I've seen them with big, huge portals, that you can open up, like a hatch. I guess some of the big ones, you can get down inside of them through the hatch, they put a ladder in there and climb down in them and scrub the insides out. So, yeah, they get rather big. Yeah, I love me some good peach brandy too. That's why I'm sitting here. This isn't real peachy. I use this stuff I got recommended, and I should have never used it for my competition. I tried. Well, I heard it was good. I've been using Tyranny and um, I never can think of the other one. Tyranny and anyway, concentrate flavors. And this is Olive Nation stuff, and at least for everybody, and it's really good and stuff. But I used this to infuse with, and it added a really good, unique sweetness to it, but it just didn't have the peach that a Monin or a Tyranny have, generally speaking. So, um, but it did add a pretty good sweetness. This is a good sweet brandy. It's just doesn't have a lot of peach flavor for some reason. And I know I used enough because this stuff's really, really concentrated. So, um, probably better for post with that Tyranny or that Olive Nation. And I'm not going to knock some of their other stuff may be much better. So don't just judge a book by its cover, because some of these flavors are kind of hit and miss. Monin and Tyranny both have some hit and miss. So some good, some not so good. Some places you can get it pretty cheap. Target has some pretty cheap prices on it if you have a Target close by. Um, I've seen varying, different Targets will carry more than others. Mine carried quite a bit, so they had like 8 different ones. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, but I got a pretty decent little selection at my Target locally. Um, but you can get them on Amazon and other places as well, and they do good for post flavoring and infusions. What is the sugar content of raw potatoes? It's starch. So potato, I'm not sure exactly. I don't think not. It's not even on the raw veggie sheet here. Um, there are quite a bit of starches. I think there's like 60-70% starches in potato. We were talking about rice last week as well. Um, and I'm just going to go with a general spud type potato. Actually, lower than I thought. So rice is going to be much starchier than potatoes. Yeah, 60 to 80%. General terms, fresh potatoes contain 20% dry matter, of which 60 to 80% is starch, with 70 to 80% of that starch as amylopectin, and then the rest of it, of course, is going to be amylose. So those that don't know, amylose is the real long string, looks like pearls of the molecules of glucose bonded together. It looks like a string of pearls, perfectly straight, bonded together. The little strings would be considered the bond part, which is a glycosidic bond, but it's just glucose molecules bonded together, and it looks basically like a big long string of pearls, basically. And that's an amylose. And amylose pectin, which is what this is mostly, is a branched. So it's going to look more like a tree or like a pine tree. So it's going to have branches and spikes coming off that main stem. So you got amylose is just perfectly straight, and then amylopectin will have is a branched starch. But most of your fruits and vegetables and everything contain both. It's just going to be in different ratios. Usually, amylopectin is the dominant starch in most everything, and that's the branched type. But yeah, you get 60 to 80% starch, so there is quite a bit of starch. And that actually, that's about the same as rice. Um, so your rice is going to be pretty much the same. Um, and corn, corn's going to be pretty much the same as well, about 75. So, all of them, all those contain roughly about the same amount of starch: rice, potatoes, corns. There's a lot of different roots um, that they use as well. Trying to think of some of the names of them. Let's see if I can put up a list here. Uh, oh, this is just how much fruit. Let's see, does it have potatoes on here? Uh, and I did, let's see, those last week we were looking for this. This is the different grades of molasses we were talking about last week. For those that were interested in looking at that, I'm not trying to change the subject, but I want to make sure I get this out there for somebody that wants to screenshot it, or I will upload this also to the um, DIY Shine and stuff and the militia files for everybody to read. This comes from the Distillers Institute, so it's a really good source of information. I added some wording here to make it a little bit more understandable, so it may look a little different than what they had, but um, this right here would basically tell you about your different grades. Now, this I will say that the Caribbean Pearl and the Golden Barrel and all that, it's probably going to be about a C grade, um, and it's inexpensive. And basically, it's what they make cookies out of, and a lot of um, pastries and other stuff that use molasses. So it's just better than this. You don't want to use this. So this is good. This is going to be a little bit more expensive. So any of these that you can get in this grade, this stuff up here is going to be real expensive, and I don't think it's going to be worth it. What little extra fermentables you're picking up, because like we talked about last week, you can add some invertase to this and increase the fermentables. Some because this is um, total sugars, and all those aren't fermentables, so you can get more out of them by adding that invertase enzyme to help break those down. And that's basically when we talk about debranching this amylose, which is just the pearl or the amylopectin enzyme or starches. When we talk about debranching them, you can look at a pine branch basically. And when you use an alpha amylase, it's basically chopping all the little branches off of it and cutting the actual branch itself into segments. But it's going to be segments from 3 to 15, 30, you know, glucose molecules long still. So it's just chopping them up, but it's not chopping them up into fermentables. So you need that beta amylase, which is an endogenous enzyme that you're going to get from your malts to help break those further down into two or one, preferably one, but two, that makes them fermentable. So, a lot of people use that alpha amylase. They think that's as far as you need to take it, but no, you've just begun the conversion. You've chopped up all those longer chains into smaller chains, and yeah, you've created some fermentable sugars because it's like that blind squirrel getting a nut every once in a while. Sometimes it chops it off at two, or it chops a branch off at the top at two or something. So some of the random, cutoffs, may be creating some fermentables, but not what you need. So those secondary enzymes like your beta amylase or your glucoamylase will take those medium chains and break them down into fermentable sugars. So those are very, very important. What's going on, Kenny? How's it going, brother? Want to do bananas Fosters, banana blackstrap molasses? Well, I'll put that back up there. I didn't read that before I put it up there, but it looks like I put it up there just in time, huh? Banana strap and vanilla and the thumper. Absolutely. Yeah, puree up some bananas. They make a banana um, concentrate. If you want to try using those, we use it in making some candies and stuff, and I've experimented with it. So you can do all that. Bananas. I will say when you mash in bananas, allow yourself for lots and lots and lots, and I mean lots of headspace because those caps, man, they get huge. So I mean, they really, like normal cap, you're getting like this. These get like this, man. I mean, I'm telling you, they get huge. So I don't want to, I'm trying to prevent a mess, and I don't want the old lady to get mad at you because it will be everywhere. So be real careful when you do the banana and leave plenty of room for them. But they're good to mash in. It's good sugar. Pawpaws. Yeah, pawpaws. We were talking about that last week. And you bring it up. Pawpaws are kind of it's an interesting fruit. It's very localized here. We have them here, but a lot of areas don't know what a pawpaw is because they can't grow them in certain areas. But there is a chemical inside them called anonicin, so you have to kind of be careful. We were talking about not sure if heating them up and distilling, probably denatures the toxin, but I'm not saying it does, but I do know a lot of people that drank a lot of pawpaw, eating a lot of pawpaws, and they seem to be okay if you want to call it that. But yeah, it's unique flavor though. It's kind of a cross between I guess a banana and a mango. Some people say pineapple-ish. So yeah, it's interesting, different fruit. And I'd say if you cook it at high enough temperatures and when you're distilling it, surely to God you cook the anonicin off, but you might not. So something to read about. I just do bananas and mangoes if you want to get that flavor. Pawpaws, if you got a tree and you've been eating them your whole life, what's it going to hurt? Because you're going to be heating it before you're not eating it directly. So probably safer to make an alcohol with them than it is to drink them. But I say that and then hear about somebody dying because it concentrates it, and I'm getting sued because I told them I'm not telling you to make pawpaw shine because it is a neurotoxin though. It is it can be pretty bad for people if you get it and get it in large amounts. It can mess with your head literally. But I ate it when I was a kid. I'm still stupid, so there you have it. I blame my memory loss on pawpaws. There it is. You have it. Vanilla, it carries over pretty well. It's just something you got to experiment with. It's for each mash size, just start out with teaspoons. Cassava, yeah, that's an excellent starch. Definitely, it's kind of like a potato. They get very and what's that other cassava and the one they make pudding from a lot, tapioca. Yeah. So there's a lot of good starch producers out there that you can use to make some pretty interesting. Yeah, yeah, pawpaws are pretty popular back in the days. Yeah, vanilla. I know it's expensive. If you can use vanilla beans and scrape, don't use a lot because they're pretty powerful. But there's a lot of people that make their own vanilla with. They make the liquor just to make to infuse with the vanilla to make a vanilla extract. So we've got people learning to make liquor so they can make their own vanilla extract. But it's pretty strong, and I can't say what's best because it's all opinion. I may say this is the best, and you're like, oh my God, it's so much, or it's not enough. I can barely taste it. So, it's just something that you got to dial in on your own. But start with a decent recipe and just go with what the recipe has and just kind of adjust things. And that's why I say write everything down. That way, especially starting out, and you can kind of create your own recipes that way too. But when something's just doesn't have enough, you think, well, that's just not enough. So to do two teaspoons the next time. Depending on the size of your mash. So when it comes to things like that, what's going on, Michael? It's yeah, kudzu root works really well. But yeah, it does take a lot, and they're free. If you get told every moonshiner back in the 20s and 30s and 40s and stuff when they brought that kudzu over and it started taking over everything that you could make shine out of the roots, there wouldn't have been a kudzu plant left in the South. They'd have had every one of them dug up. If that's all you had to tell them, you make some shine out of that kudzu root. Shit, there wouldn't been no kudzu left, man. They'd taken every bit of it. So get a big bucket bigger than a 7 gallon. Yeah, if you're doing a 5 gallon, yeah, you need probably 8 to 10 because I'm telling you, those caps get big. You just don't want to mess. And it's nice to have one that's oversized in it. And there's nothing wrong with making twice as much mash as you need because you can run one, let it clear and rack it off and run half of it today and the other half tomorrow, or let it sit for a week or so. And that's the beauty of it. If you keep it keep it covered, keep the critters out of it, it'll keep for a pretty good while. If you put it under a vapor lock, you can do that as well. I do that for my brandies, but not so much for my grains and stuff. But they'll keep. I mean, Tom Crumb, hell, he's kept a grain mash in his barn for probably 6, 8 months. Sitting there in a barrel. With just the lid not tightened, just sitting on it. So you know they'll last for a long time. And that way you'll have something run anytime you want to run something. Just always have that. Go back and grab some and fill your steel of it, full of it, and then always have some more to run next time. It's pretty nice to have, and that's the reason a lot of people like to do a sour mash as well. That way they've always got something pretty close to being able to be run. Especially if you have two fermenters going, you can kind of go back and forth and cycle them, and that way you always have something that's ready to run. Doing a rice run using amylase, glucoamylase, aging with char, Mizrana oak. I've heard of some Ambriana, but Mizrana is a new one. Dried Japanese plum and green tea leaves sounds awesome. Um, I'm pretty fond of just the old white oak chestnut. If you can get some good old chestnut, see, back in the old days, before the chestnut blight, before all the shit happened with the chestnut trees, most of your wine and liquors and stuff were aged in barrels made with chestnut. And this is something we talked about with Philbilly years ago, and why he focused. He got somebody to get him some chestnut, and he's worked with it and experimented with it, and it works really well. It colors really quickly. It ages really quicker than oak, and a lot of people like the flavor of it. But yeah, used to, most of your old barrels from the 1700s and 1800s were all pretty much chestnut, and then after the blight, they they went to French oak and to a white oak. So maybe experiment with some. I know it's hard. You're not going to find a barrel, but just maybe some, just adding some, chips or just charred wood to it. Um, be interesting. Now, are you going to try the yellow label angel yeast? So we were talking last week about doing the rice, and I found that cooking rice tends to lower the starch content. So I guess somehow, and don't rinse it, because a lot of that powder and stuff is starches. I'm finding out. So break it up, grind it, don't cook it, and just use that yellow label. And that way, you're going to start out with the most amount of starches for that yellow label to convert. So that'll be pretty interesting to see how that works. So I'm going to do basically a no cook rice and a no cook corn, with the yellow label, and just to see how they turn out. And I know Michael Hatley and Brittany, they got some yellow label going. I'd say it's probably just about ready. It was 9 days in Saturday, so they're probably close to day 14 now. I haven't looked on their page yet, but I'd say they're getting pretty close to running it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that turns out for them, because I'm definitely going to experiment with some this year, this spring. Yeah, there's a lot of pawpaws. A lot of people planting them, and they taste good. They're definitely different, and they look different. Yeah, I agree. Use the vanilla beans and scrape them, and I would just, I'd scrape them to get that off, but I'd throw the damn bean in the infuser too. I'd get it all in there. Well, we can uh, we can help you out with a recipe. Now, have you looked in Phil Billy's? I'm sure Phil Billy's got a video on doing some banana. So, matter of fact, I know he's done some on banana. I've done some banana too, but I don't I don't know where my books are. I had to dig it out. But excuse me, shoo. That's when you don't get to sleep good. I got sciatic nerve in the back of my leg. It's driving me crazy, man. It's keeping me from sleeping good. It's hard to lay down. Uh, but bananas there's quite a few good ones. I'll after this show's over, I'll find a Timmy. Join the Moonshine Militia on Facebook. You on Facebook? Join the Moonshine Militia, and I'll throw in some. Let me see if they got any banana already in there. No, no. I'll find a decent banana recipe, or I'll find several. Now, be aware the ones I put in there, I'm not actually done, but they come from some fairly reputable sources. So, there's always going to be fine tuning to be done. So, you know, sugar wise, you may feel, need to add a little bit of sugar if you want to get to a certain starting gravity. Bananas are pretty messy, and racking them becomes an issue. I let mine sit for a long time and to get clear. And a lot of people just don't have patience, But I mean, I let it sit for like a month to clear up good because it was a very messy mash. And I did gently punch the cap every day, and it didn't completely fall. Neither did my pineapple when I did, the last pineapple I didn't completely fall, but I just rack it into a secondary fermentation vessel and let those sit. I get those big 5-gallon water bottles that you turn upside down for the drink fountains at all these offices and stuff, those 5-gallon. And you can buy those. They're pretty cheap and it makes good clean water to mash with. For like my wines, I use it for wines where it's really important to have good water quality. More important to have good quality water for your wines and your beers than it is for something you're going to distill. So I'm not saying tap water is the best thing in the world, but um, tap water is better for distilling than it is for wine making or beer making. So if you do like a lot of wines and stuff, and you really want some good clear water, you can use that 5 gallons for your wine, and you can use that it's um, PET, polyethyl toluene. It's a suitable plastic for holding liquor. It's the same plastic that they use in the stores for the plastic whiskey bottles and stuff that they use. So ethanol and stuff won't break it down. It's a PET, polyethyl toluene. So it's a suitable plastic like HD, PE, high density polyethylene, and LDPE, lower density polyethylene. So all those plastics are okay for ethanol. Now, if you have a lot of heads, it's not so good. So you don't want to get a lot of ethyl acetates and acetones because that will break some of those plastics down. But um, this is in mashing is not to that volume percentage wise, it's not high enough percentage where it's going to etch it and cause a lot of problems with microplastics and stuff. So it's fine for fermenting. Glass is preferred, but these are cheap. A number 10 stopper fits right in them, and when they get dirty or you can't rinse them anymore, you just take them in, return it, and they'll exchange it. You don't have to pay a deposit on your next one, so that you get your deposit uh, in exchange. So and that helps too. You don't have to keep them as clean. After a while, a lot of that fruit and stuff starts taking to the insides of it, and it's hard to get out. But yes, Clint, tapioca, yucca, palmetto root. Yeah, there's lots and lots of tubers and roots and stuff that you can use that are starchy. That works really well. Tapioca has pretty high starch content, and that's something I've never seen people use, and something that would be pretty interesting to experiment with because I like the flavor of it, tapioca pudding. So I think that'd be an interesting mash. And I've always wanted to do it, but never have. And actually, I think it might be in one of these tapioca. Yeah. So it gives you a range, an arrowroot here too. And here's the potato. So, this is a really good chart. This is really handy. I keep it on my phone. So um, it's hard for me to remember all these temperatures. I used to have most of them down. I don't anymore, but it's very handy. Um, so yeah, let's see. Tapioca. Yeah, I think very wide range there. And I'll have to read more about it, but definitely would like to try. That's something I've always wanted to try, but hadn't. So maybe I'll do that sometime soon too. But yeah, I'll dig around and find you a good banana hill. I might even be able to find one real quick right now. Let me just do a quick search with banana, and we'll see what we come up with. I know I've got a shitload of recipes, but not all tried, so that it's hard for me to recommend something without trying it. But let me just do a search on banana, and boom. Lots and lots. Well, I don't know why some of these are coming up. Oh, okay. Banana brandy, Anna's banana moonshine, banana brandy, banana shine. So Pirate's Life banana rum, banana liquor. There's another Pirate's Life banana. A lot of these are just copied and renamed. Banana liquor 62. So I'll throw uh, I'll throw a handful of those up there in the militia files and the DIY files after this is over, and after the show, Timmy, just join that. Are you in the militia already, Timmy? Absolutely, sugar cane is excellent, man. That's really good sugar for fermenting. Yeast loves sugar cane sap. It's broken down real well. It's a monosaccharide, so they love it. Just don't when you make it, don't take it to the point where you caramelize the sugars. Don't do it too high a temperature where it turns color. So keep the temps down and do a slow conversion and or slow cook, and you'll get good. It's kind of like doing maple syrup, same way. You're just basically cooking off a lot of the water and leaving the sugars behind. So just go real slow and don't caramelize it, or else you'll turn them from simple sugars into complex sugars, and then you'll have to use some sort of amylase to break those up with. So, um, but yeah, sugarcane makes excellent fermentables. Yes, sir, it does. And surprisingly, it doesn't take that much longer to run it off either. Of course, 50 gallons is going to take longer than 5 gallons to distill, but it's not going to be 10 times longer. So yeah, it's interesting how the scale goes. All right, brother, you out of here? And you do the same. Enjoy your evenings. Thanks for stopping in, and be sure to check back with us Saturday and bring us your questions, and definitely join the militia and check out some of these recipes we're going to be sharing in there. I'm going to talk to Phil Billy and see if he can't start shooting some of his in there. But you got to go to the video and like them. Can I? It's a lot easier to read if I if I select. Can I alternately soak rice and then use alpha amylase and glucose for the starch conversion? I have questions on cooking rice. I think so too. I'm going to grind mine up, Michael. I'm not going to. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to soak, and I'm not going to rinse. And I did find out that last week. I don't remember who it was. It was talking about the brown grain, long grain rice has more starches. Yes, they do. Um, and where is the? I've got a chart. Just a minute. So this is the starch concentrations in different varieties of rice. And this also, I know it's probably hard for you guys to read it, but I will share this. Let me make a note. Banana recipe starch in rice chart. So I'll share those both to DIY and the militia page so y'all can read it better. I know it's probably going to be hard to read here, but yeah, it talks here about the different starches and the temperatures and cooking it and how you actually lose some starches when you heat up and cook it. So, and you really don't need that for your yellow label amylase or yellow label yeast anyway that has the amylase and everything built into it. So um, I don't even think you need to use that. Oh, are you using, Michael? Are you using the yellow label, or are you just going with a standard yeast? What's up, Mr. Lopez? What's going on, brother? Absolutely. Yeah, we're here on every Wednesday and Saturday, brother. 8 o'clock Eastern, and help you out any way we can. We'll try to answer all the questions. We may not. I mean, I don't know it all. I don't care what other people say. I don't know it all, but I do have some good sources for information. If we can't answer it, we will find an answer. If I have to go to, I know some very, very, very knowledgeable people that I go to answer my questions. So um, there's no questions that you should be afraid to ask. I don't care how easy or complex. Um, every week we'll answer the same questions. We'll have people come on here just starting out, want to know about steels. So sometimes my answers may become a little bit repetitive, but as you hear me preach them several times, you'll remember it, and you'll be able to help people out. When they have the same questions, because basically everybody has the same questions. Got a dehydrator full of dandelion root and wild violets. Awesome. And for those that don't know Miss Lisa Day, she's our resident expert on everything edible plants and tinctures, making tinctures and medicines and herbal remedies and holistic medicine. She's our go-to gal for all that good stuff. So, um, yeah, she'll chime in when we talk about certain things, and I'm not sure. She'll help me. She'll fill me full of facts. So she's a good person to know, very sweet lady, and if y'all don't know her yet, get to know her because she's she's definitely an attribute to the community and the Shine families. That's for sure. She's very involved and very knowledgeable. So Miss Lisa is definitely somebody you want to know. She is a VIP. Yellow label Wale. I like that. Yellow label angel Wale. I like. Is that what they're calling it, Clint? Wale. I like it. This yellow label angel yeast is a mouthful. Yeah, it uses a koji fungus. Yep. Yep. And I think it actually might be, if I'm not mistaken, it might be a combination of yeast. There might be actually two yeasts in there, a koji and another one. Um, okay, Michael's using distiller, so I'm gonna try the no cook method with using the Wale. I like the Wale yellow label angel yeast, um, and try to see that. Yeah, the distillers red starter should be fine. Um, but yeah, with that, you definitely want to use your alpha and let's see, rice. You got a very wide range here that you can, cook your rice all the way down to the 150s, 140 change. So, and this is short grain and long grain. And so, um, yeah, yeah, I think you should be able to do that without relying on any of the natural amylases that may be in there. I'm sure it has. If you malt, can you malt rice, malted rice malt? they have malted rice. That would be good if you could malt some. That'd be interesting. I've never malted rice or even thought about it, but it's just like anything else. So, and oh, this is interesting. Koji in Japan, malted rice is known as koji, which is a type of mold used to ferment various foods. So the koji we were just talking about is actually malted rice. Learn something new every day, don't we? That's very interesting. So yeah, if you do have a malt rice, I'm sure this is going to be, closer to the temperatures that you're going to get for denaturing and getting your amylase range. So if you get into this part, it's denatured. But if you get beyond here, you're going to denature some of your rice. This is probably just a common everyday white standard rice. This is a short grain. This is a long grain. So I would definitely follow these temps pretty closely. But if you plan on doing any cooking at all, but to add the alpha, you may have to get it to a certain temp for it to activate properly. High temp has a pretty huge range. The powder is pretty specific. So if you're using the alpha powder, you definitely want to get it to the upper level of that range, or malt some rice, man. That I didn't know koji was malted rice. Damn. I thought it was a different fungus altogether. So we're learning. First wine was a dandelion. That makes some really good wine. There's a lot of flowers that make great wines. No, I certainly don't. I know a little bit more than the average beer, but yeah, yeah. Clint and I've been doing this for a long time. He's been we both been doing it over 40 years. I don't know, Clint. You seem to be pretty sharp, brother. I definitely appreciate you in here helping out, man. You definitely helped me out a lot because at times I kind of get behind, and while I'm trying to answer somebody else's question, uh, Clint will jump in there and help out with some of the other questions, beginning questions and stuff, and intermediate. And I love it, man. I definitely love having everybody. I hope to have it to where when somebody comes in and answers questions, it'll be about 5 people answering it the same way. It'll be, because I know it's working. I know what I'm doing is working because I want to educate, a lot of beginners and intermediates. And, I'm not advanced, I'm not at an advanced level for all the distilling stuff because there's a lot of intricate stuff that I've not done. That I've never run a big fractional column and a lot of stuff like that. That kind of seems overwhelming. Even to me when I walk in and look at some of this equipment and stuff they run, it looks like a freaking, looks like a gas refinery or an oil refinery or something. Man, there's shit everywhere, tubes everywhere, valves and shut offs and computer. It's very advanced. Distilling has gotten very advanced in the commercial, in the large scale. So yeah, I'm not there. I'm not the guy you wanna hire if you got a 50 million, $100 million distillery you want to put in. I'm probably, I could work there, but I'm not going to be the head guy that runs all that because I don't have the experience in it. But in mash making and pot distillation, yeah, I'd say there's probably not a lot of people that know more than me and Clint. Yep. Oh yeah. Lisa's on Thursday. Thank you, Chris. Lisa comes on Thursdays and what Monday you Mark doing a Monday thing? So I think they're doing like an herbal thing and tinctures and holistic and is that on Monday, Lisa? I know there's a delay, so when I ask, it'll take it probably about 6 seconds or so for her to get the question and a little bit more to type it out, and she may be doing a couple of things at once. But yeah, I think her and Mark Morgan have a yes, Monday night. Yeah, I think her and Mark on Monday nights they have a thing they talk about different herbals and tinctures and all, holistic medicine and things of that nature. So that's over on Morgan Moonshine page, and I'm pretty sure they cross post that to the militia page as well. So that's our Monday night show that y'all should watch too. Very, very informative. Thanks, Chris, for reminding me, brother. Yep, and she's on Thursdays for ladies' night. If you want the skinny on what's going on. So you're gonna soak it, and just bring the rice mash up to 150 for the alpha. Yep, yep. Gelatinize it. Drop temp to 70, 90. Yep. No, you're not. If it's in the container, you're not going to lose it because it's not going to exit the container. But somehow cooking it, and I'm guessing at beyond the 175 here, denaturing it because rice actually goes to 180 here. So I think if you do like 170 cook, it might not, but I'm not sure what temp. Let me put my glasses on. I'm trying to read this shit. Yeah, I call it parboiled. The parboiled has a lower concentration of starch. Now here is they got basmati, sticky rice, parboiled. See here you see that parboiled is pretty low on the chart there. Let me see if they have a temperature. So let's talk about the high glycemic index. Lots of starches. Yeah, talks about people with diabetes and how they should stay away, and cooked rice will have, yeah, raw. It was hypothesized that raw rice would contain the lowest concentration of starch due to its low glycemic index, but they found that that might not be the case. Um, and I think this is just the experiments that they did. The results indicate that raw rice contains the lowest concentration of starch of 10.566, as it has the lowest absorbance and was supported by calculation. The results also basmati rice. Now, I'm not sure what raw rice is. I guess that's an unrefined rice, maybe just freshly picked. Um, but yeah, this is the raw rice here, and this is it here. So it's very low starch. So this is different types of rice: basmati, jasmine, parboiled, and you can see parboiled here. So that's just like a regular rice that's been cooked, and I guess with boiling, so that would probably be really high temp. Yeah, we're looking at higher temperatures. So, and then the jasmine's there, the basmati's there, and then no, I'm sorry, the basmati's up here. Basmati, basmati rice, and the sticky rice is there. So yeah, just a raw rice, and I'm assuming by raw. It depends on the amylase that you're using, Steve. The powdered amylase that you get has a really small window. I think it's like 160. I haven't used it in a while. I've got a bag I can go look at, or I can. Um, Powdered amylase alpha. ranging 150 to 90. Yeah, the stuff I use that have that range. Um, yeah, let me grab the bag because this is not consistent. Yeah, here we go. Brewhoff's Alpha powder works best at 152 to 158. That sounds a lot more like the tight range that I get with the stuff that I'm using. So most of us are going to be using that, and it's 150 to 60. Yeah. So 150 to 60 range is the 158 or 159. Um, just you want to go to the upper edge. It's more active. It activates better and quicker, and it's more effective, and it works faster. Um, but anywhere between 150 and 160 with that powdered amylase should be fine. And that right there is a perfect example of how, you look at AI, answered that 150 to 90. I knew that shit was wrong because, if you're using high temp alpha, but this is powdered. And I've never seen a powder that would sustain at 190. So AI don't know shit. Don't depend on that and don't depend on Reddit. I like to go to Distilling Institute if I can. Home Distiller has some fairly decent, it's kind of like the Facebook. It gets a lot of opinions and stuff in there that's not, they get a lot of facts crossed, but yeah, 150 to 60 if you're powdered amylase. So I'd go about 100 and, 60 with the rice and add it at that temp. Yeah, I love my charts, man. It's a lot easier for people to read and understand when they have it in front of them. And I'm getting old and forgetful, man. I used to know all these temperatures and all this stuff. I never knew the grams of sugars and all these fruits. I generally know, that these have more sugar than these just from experience and running them and seeing how much sugar I have to add when I mash them in. But I mean, I love my charts. You're right, man. I do. And there's several charts here that we can use that, if you just have these handful of charts, they're so helpful, grains and, add a calculator to that little grain calculator, man. And really, you don't need much else. You can make your own recipes. Everybody asks about recipes and stuff. Basically, if you've got this part down and how much fruit to add to each gallon of water, and you tend to go towards the upper limit so you don't have to add sugar. Um, you can make your own recipes, and just start out with 5 pounds of bananas, fresh bananas. Wait till they get spots or, start getting some brown on them, when they start, creating or actually converting sugars, and mash those in and do a hydrometer reading. Once you get them all stirred in, with bananas, they're starchy as well. So you can use some amylase on them. Not as much as you would with a grain, but there's a lot of natural sugars in there, a lot of amylopectins in there too, um, which is the branch we talked about. But yeah, you start out with like 5 and mash those in and pour your hot water, 160-degree water on there to make sure you killed off any kind of bacteria or wild yeast, and mush them and blend them and get it to, and then it's a little harder to take a gravity reading because it gets really, um, yeah, the the high temp amylase I love, um, because it has such a large range, like the 150 to 90. Yeah, I would believe for a high temp, liquid amylase, absolutely. But for that powdered stuff, man, that powder stuff's pretty sensitive, and yeah, you don't want to get it over 160. So I wasn't sure the upper number on that. Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought about malting rice, but yeah, it would have to be before the hull was removed, right? Because I mean, regular white rice that's just after it gets hulled and the hull and everything's gone. So I think you'd have to have it kind of wild with your husk still attached and moisten it. I don't think you could sprout white rice. White rice, because I think that's a little bit more of a refined rice anyway. Yeah, I found some on Amazon, 25 a brick for 500 grams. So that's $10 off, the lowest price I'd ever seen it at. So I thought, well, this is the time to try it. I've been wanting to. So this spring, I'm definitely going to be trying it and worked for a few years at a refinery in East Texas. Those refineries are really huge, just huge steels. Well, actually, my little steel, it's kind of complex. It's on my phone. I don't have the picture on the PC, I don't think. But yeah, it's kind of complex to a lot of people. So I'm sure I could be taught to run one. It's just, when you walk in and look at it and you don't know what everything is, and it's never been explained to me, it kind of a little intimidating looking at that big continuous column that fractionally distills. That's I think it's just the bomb, man. I'd love to have work on something like that. Steve, it depends on your amylase. If you're using the powdered amylase, I wouldn't recommend getting that anymore. I used to use it, 150/60. That's the alpha, powdered alpha. Now the liquid high temp alpha, 150 to 190, and maybe even higher depending on who makes it. Clint's talking about the Sebstar, which is pretty much a standard industry standard. Um, so 190, and I think that pretty much falls into here. When this chart was made, this is malt enzymes. Okay, if you look down here, this gray is for malt enzymes. Um, the alpha high temp liquid is not necessary. I don't think it's a malt enzyme. I think it's an enzyme that's maybe comes from sweet potatoes, if I'm not mistaken, um, and other sourced vegetables. So it's not necessary. It's not a malt enzyme. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna make me a little continuous still. Eric Ayers, a real good friend of mine and buddy and co-founder of DIY Shining Stuff. Um, he actually made him a good little continuous steel and column. Now, it wasn't a fractionalization steel, but it was really great at stripping. So he could just continuously feed and strip with it, and it was the bomb. It was awesome. He spent a lot of time and tuning on that thing, man. He got it down to working really well. A little home continuous column. It was cool. He liked to experiment like I do and try different things. But back to Steve's question, yeah, like the alpha that we're talking about here, this is a liquid high temp alpha amylase, and Firm Solutions makes it, and I'm not I'm not sure if they don't make the Sebstar, um, but there's several different makers of it out there. Um, some people just buy it and rebottle it and sell it. There's a lot of different places you can get it, from Amazon to Firm Solutions to your brew shop, beer stop and stuff. So, but yeah, for the alpha there, for the beta. Now, when we're talking about alpha from getting it from your grains, that's where this chart comes into handy, Steve. This is the range. that the amylase that's contained alpha and beta, this is called an endogenous enzyme. When it comes from within the plant itself, that you're not sourcing it externally or exogenous. This is an endogenous. So this chart shows you the temperature ranges for your endogenous enzymes. So you go beyond this upper point on any of these and you denature the enzyme that is contained in these malted grains. So basically, if you go here, you probably denatured here, but you can go here. So it's just showing you that it's probably going to be denatured. I'm not sure. I do know that you're not going to take a small granule corn that's got malt up to that temperature, so I'm assuming that here is the cutoff at about 175 for most of your um, alphas in all these. But some of these have a lower, like sorghum. You don't want to take it over 168, or you're going to denature some of your natural enzymes. Now, a lot of this, if you want to use a liquid alpha, you can not really concern yourself with an upper limit, but you need to stay within this range, or else you'll take out your beta amylase. And we talked earlier about how the beta amylase chops up the medium strings into disaccharides or monosaccharides. So it's going through there, clipping all these up and breaking them down into fermentables. And without that beta amylase, you don't get a fermentable unless you just get lucky. Like I said, sometimes the alpha is that little blind squirrel that gets it cut just in the right place to make it. But generally, they got certain cleave spots that they break it down into, and it's called an oligosaccharide, which is basically 3 to 12 glucose strings long. And so your alpha breaks it into these oligosaccharides, and which just means 3 to 12. And then your gluco or beta amylase will come in and chop those up, the oligosaccharides, into disaccharides or monosaccharides. And that's what it's required for your yeast to be able to eat. It has to be a disaccharide or a monosaccharide or a specific type of trisaccharide that's not common. So basically, it needs to be a disaccharide, which is just two molecules bonded together, or a monosaccharide with just individual molecules that are alone. Muscadines in the sugar chart. I would say muscadines are going to follow pretty much where most of your grapes do, pretty high. These grapes are probably a little higher than a wine grape. This is considered probably a table grape. So a wine grape may be just a little bit less in a mango range or something. So may not be quite as sweet as a grape, but they have a little bit more body and flavor. And a lot of times, these wineries will intentionally stress the grapes to create unique flavors. And a lot of times, if their plant is producing heavy, they'll just go in and start cutting lots of big grapes out, man. I mean, they don't want it to produce heavy either. They want it to be stressed. They don't want really good soils. They don't want the best soil. So they generally plant them in off soils. It's interesting, how they do some of these grapes to get more unique flavors out of them. You talking about like the pectic enzymes versus others? Yeah, pectic enzymes basically break down the cell walls of the fruit itself, and it's not actually breaking down the sugar. It's basically breaking down more of a cellulose and plant materials. So when you use the pectic enzymes on fruits like peaches, you can take pectic enzymes and put it in a meaty peach, and then the next day it's like there's no pulp left, man. It just consumed all of the stringy peach, the mushy stringy peach part. It will increase your heads though, so you'll get an increase in foreshots, because when it consumes the cellulose and the plant material, it creates a methanol in there. But it will allow you to be so much more efficient in getting out all the sugars from the cells. Each cell will rust up each individual cell, kind of like freezing will do, but it's much more efficient than just freezing. Freezing will get probably 60% of them. Uh, pectic enzyme gets about all. So if you let it work overnight, a lot of your fruits and stuff, so it'll help work those off. And so when you hear somebody talk about um, pectic enzymes, it's a little bit different than chewing up starches. It's actually chewing up plant material, cellulose, and very useful still, but it's a little bit different enzyme. So when you hear someone talk about pectic enzymes versus pectin, big difference. Pectin is something that you add to um, fruits and in jelly making to thicken things. It's a thickening agent. So a lot of people confuse pectic enzymes with pectin, and they go to the store and they buy pectin and they come home and add it, and it gets thicker and it's great for making Jello and jelly, but not so good for your mash. So there is a little bit of misnomers there on pectic enzyme, pectinase, and what they do. Um, let's see if I can find out. Pectic Pectinase is an enzyme that breaks down pectin, a complex polysaccharide found in plant cell walls. So this is the cellulose that I'm talking about. It's a polysaccharide. Cellulose is a base for sugar. So you can you've heard people talk about you can make liquor or alcohol from toilet paper or tree pulp. And that's basically a cellulose. So you break that cellulose down, it's the same. You break those chains down, convert them, and you can make grain wood alcohol, so or methanol. And but pectinase is it helps you extract the juice, so it's breaking everything down on a cellular level. Now if you've got like a raspberry, and how raspberries have like teeny little round BBs, that's each cell. So you can physically break those up pretty well without using a pectinase, right? Or you can freeze them and they kind of bust and they get real mushy. The texture of them is real bad and not so good for cooking after they're fresh, but it really helps if you want to break them down. So that's probably the best thing to use for raspberries and blackberries and all those. Really don't need to use a lot of the pectic enzymes on that, because just physically mashing them up and to a pulp, uh, uh, little pun there, um, will be sufficient. But like peaches, you can't do that to a peach because it's just got all that meat in there, and all that meat and stuff is holding all these juices. Apples, same way. So there's a lot of fruits and melons, stuff like that are meaty. You really need some sort of pectinase in there or pectin enzyme to break those down. And you're just breaking the cell walls down. So you're not basically breaking starches to convert to sugars. You're breaking the cell walls down, which release all the goodness. See, these cells contain all this sugar, and that sugar is what the cell uses for energy until the plant can utilize the sun for energy. So all this is stored for the seedling, or for the plant to actually break ground. So this is the energy that it uses, it consumes to feed all these processes, to get the growth, to send that one shoot out. And once that one shoot comes out and those leaves open up, those cotton leaves open up, then you start getting sunshine, and it starts converting, the sunshine into energy through photosynthesis. So That's what all these sugars basically and all these plants are for, is to feed the seed and to help it grow. And if you want to get at all those, you want to use some pectic enzymes to get to them. Try persimmons. Persimmons make excellent wine and excellent liquor. Personally, I have not done it, but I have tried it. Makes good wine. It makes good liquor. They've got a lot around here in Kentucky. I know around Louisville and stuff. There's a lot of persimmon trees there. A lot of persimmon trees here in this state, but I've never done them. But I've drank the wine in the shyness cup. Yeah, yeah, I do the same, Chris. I mean, I make the wine and Sebflow. No, is this another enzyme to help hydrolyze? I'm assuming. Yeah, I'm gonna have to Google it. Sebflow. Well, I'm not finding it, brother. Tell me what it does. It's just showing me the HTL and the alpha. The HTL, for those that don't know, is just high temp liquid amylase. Rye slime, yeah, rye gets a little messy. So does wheat and oats. They all get a little messy. But yeah, I generally do the same, Chris. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they get pretty bitter. I've never really fooled with persimmons a lot. Um, so I'm not the authority to go to for persimmons, but I'd like to try them. And if I can get any kind of fruit for free or real cheap, or somebody's got like trees and says, "Hey man, you want to come get these?" I'm all over it. I'll be there. But to try to go to the store and buy persimmons and make a wine, that gets expensive. It's like, everybody has, oh, dragon fruit and all these other exotic fruits and shit. I'm like, man, I don't have that kind of money. That fruit's expensive. And, if I had somebody that had an orchard, and had a bunch of, you know, on the ground that was a little overly ripe that they couldn't sell, and they just, had, come pick them and beat off the yellow jackets and get them, I'd probably do that. But, um, generally I wait for something to go on sale. But there are some secondhand fruit stores that try to um, sell them in bulk right before they go bad. Before they end up in a landfill or turned under, fertilizer. So, you know, I got buddies that drive hours and hours to some of those places and pick up fruit and on a really good deal. I'm talking crazy cheap. I'm talking about like $2 a pallet. Yeah, pennies a pound. So yeah, I can see me if they have persimmons or something and they got pallets of them, I can definitely see me. I'm looking for one closer. The closest one to me is like 6, 7 hours away, and that's just a bit far. I don't have anything that fuel efficient that can carry enough back. If I had to, one of them electric trucks or something, maybe you could kind of afford to do that. Somebody else is buying the batteries. Yeah, is that persimmons? There's a lot of fruits like that, Branson. Like we were talking earlier, the pawpaws. They have that anonymous in them, and sassafras. This people talk about using sassafras and making root beers and sassafras shine and all that, and it's like that's got saffrole in it. So that shit's used to synthesize to make MDMA and some really hard hallucinogenic drugs and shit. So uh yeah, you had a bad experience. Yeah. So, it's kind of like gin. Once you drink gin to the point that you're throwing it up, you don't drink gin for a little while. I went many years after, you know, tasting gin go through my nose before I tried it again. I used to drink quite a bit of gin, and seems like any alcohol like that that has that distinctive of a flavor, once you get kind of sick on it, it's like, you kind of steer away from it for a while. So I went along. We used to drink a lot of Tanqueray, and I got pretty sick on it, and I quit drinking it pretty much to this day. I'll still drink a little bit of gin. I know Lisa Lowry makes an excellent gin I've tried, and there's some other floral, less juniper based gins that are interesting and good that are coming out these days. Found something interesting when I was researching. I do a little bit of research on a lot of different topics and stuff, and I was trying to come up with a way to do to distill under a vacuum. And because you can distill, if it's under a vacuum, you can distill at lower temperatures. And if you have lower temperatures, you have lower flavor degradation. So I did some research and I'm thinking, man, this would be great for gin. And then I found out that they just maybe a year prior to this outfit in the Carolinas somewhere set up a gin distillery where they were distilling under a vacuum and maintaining a lot of the flavor that was in, a lot of the spice and stuff that goes in it. Now, this is something Lisa might be interested in doing some of her tinctures and stuff too. If you do it in a vacuum, you can probably maintain some of these medicinal qualities um, and make some better tinctures. Because I'm sure a lot of the medicines and stuff, once it gets to a certain temperature, just like these toxins, get denatured and rendered, useless. So I know a lot of toxins are that way. Not all, but a lot of the toxins are that way. It's kind of like getting stung by jellyfish. If you just pour hot water over that jellyfish sting, you'll denature um, a lot of the toxins in that jellyfish sting. I got stung by scorpion fish and about died when I was younger, snorkeling around Cozumel, and they were breeding in the shallows. And I put my hand right down on one, man. I mean, it got me with several of its spines just right in my hand, and man, it was bad, bad. Um, yeah, yeah, it sure will, Jeff. Um, but And I found out later that if I just poured really hot, hot, hot water over that, it would have denatured a lot of it. But it was a neuromuscular toxin, and it's one of the most dangerous critters in the sea. And oh boy, about died from that shit. Sure did. About killed me. Bad, bad. I mean, I was writing my will out on my way home. I just knew I was going to die, man. I was sick for many years after that. I couldn't for like almost 3 years. The vertigo feeling you feel when you're going down an elevator and it drops real fast and your stomach feels like it's floating. Um, that's what I felt like 24/7, sleeping, waking, for about 2.5, almost 3 years. Drive you crazy, man. Just that butterfly all the time. I became less social. I was a lot less social after I got sick. I used to go out and shoot pool and drink and get in billiard tournaments and party a little bit, and then after that happened, man, I didn't go anywhere. I was sick. All I could hold down was like chicken and a baked potato, and that's just broiled chicken, nothing, no spice, no uh, barbecue sauce, nothing. Getting just nothing. Couldn't hardly eat anything. Just made me sick. So like 3 years, I ate broiled chicken and baked potato, and lost a lot of weight. Everybody said, "Oh, you look great, Joe. You're looking great." Like, man, I'm glad I look good because I feel like shit, man. But yeah, I'd lost a lot. But yeah, it should have about killed me, man. But little did I know if I'd have just taken, some hot water, as hot as I could have stood it, and poured it over that sting area, it would have denatured a lot of it. I would have still got sick, but not as sick or as for long. But yeah, it was bad, bad. You definitely don't want to get around those critters. Like the top 10 most deadly thing in the sea. Um, if I'd have been stung by one from the Indo-Pacific, yeah, I'd have died. Yeah, I'd have been dead. Fortunately, it was an Atlantic. Its cousin is the lionfish. The lionfish are much less toxic, but it's a cousin of the lionfish. But these scorpion fishes are much more toxic. And if it had been the one that is over in the East Asia, in that area, in the Asian area, they've got a variety of them over there that, yeah, it'd have killed me based on the symptoms that I got. I talked to a doctor out of Stanford. He's probably the number one authority in the world on uh, toxins from water. What would you call that? Um, Marine biologist. Yeah, he's a marine biologist. He probably knew more than about anybody. But yeah, pectic enzymes. Yeah, you want to use those at room temperature. Yeah, what the best thing to do is when you're making like a wine or you're making a brandy. Um, when you first start, you'll of course pour maybe some 160-degree plus water over top of your fruit to kill off any wild yeast and any bacteria and any bird shit and anything else that may be on there that you didn't get washed off, right? So you're cleaning it off with that and killing off anything, but you let it cool and check your pH, adjust your pH down to 5.3, and then add your pectic enzymes and you let those work for 24, 48 hours. And yeah, similar to a blowfish. Yep. This is a neuromuscular toxin though, so it works on your brain and your muscles. So that night I was curled up and I was basically shaking like the little mouse, all curled up and drawn up, that you've been bit by the snake right before it dies, right? I mean, I'm going through shock and convulsions and really sweating profusely, pale. Um, but later, I could drink like a cold drink, and it'd be like I'm drinking hot coffee, and I could touch something hot, and it would feel cold as ice. So it reversed the feeling. Yeah, it was really weird. So, but back to Randy's question. I'm sorry, Randy. Um, but yeah, pectic enzymes at room temperature, 90 degrees to 70 degrees is fine. Um, but you want to add them when it's a little cooler. You don't want to denature them. But yeast pitching temps, is a good temperature and time to do it. But I usually work the pectic enzymes for 24 to 48 hours before I add any yeast. So I give those an opportunity to do their thing, and it's amazing. I mean, especially when you're working with like a peach, it is amazing how it goes from just slimy as fuck with just, it's mushy. You got all that meaty from your peach everywhere, and it's just a thick goo. And it's like, man, will this ever thin out? And then you put those pectic enzymes and let them work for a couple of days, man. And you go back and look at it, it's like freaking water, man. It's like the pulp's gone. It's just gone. So yeah, use your pectic enzymes at regular room temp. I think below 90, they shouldn't denature. They should be fine. And then just let them work for a day or two, couple days, and I'm telling you, man, it's amazing what they'll do to peaches and watermelons and other, apples and a lot of other fruits that are meaty like that. Yeah, I about died from a typhoid flu vaccine back in the 70s. I grew up in Eastern Kentucky and we had floods there. You know, we just had some recently too, but we had some major flooding there when I was young. I was probably, it's before I drove. So it's 77. I was 14. Um, so I was doing a lot of volunteer work. I was helping a lot of people clean out their shops and they're in town and just, helping everybody like small town people do. You don't work for, when shit like that happens, you just help everybody out and each other out, especially if you weren't affected. So our house didn't get flooded. We were up on the hill. So I was in town and I was helping a lot of people squeegee and pressure wash and clean out, um, their places and hosing everything down and going through shit and trying to figure out what could be kept and what couldn't, and things like that, and washing and just a lot of work. And there were some buses that they were getting ready to go hand out food and stuff. And they said, well, if you're going to be going out in the county, we recommend that you get this typhoid flu vaccine, because you're going to be working, if you get cut or scraped or in, you don't want to get this typhoid flu. There was a big worry. So I took this typhoid flu vaccine, and I sat around and after I got it, Dr. Fox, she was a brilliant lady. She just passed away a couple of years ago. Brilliant, brilliant woman. She worked at the health department, ran the health department there for many, many, many years. Could have gone anywhere and made millions, but she dedicated her life to helping Eastern Kentuckians out. She was special. But so they recommended that we take this vaccine, and so I took it. And maybe 15 minutes, I started feeling uneasy, just a little shaky, kind of like I was nervous, anxious, and I never, encountered anything like that. So I was like, wow, why am I shaking? It's kind of like DTs, and so and it just kept getting worse and worse. And I'm getting ready to get on this damn bus, and I'm like, and they're like, come on, man, we're going, and to hand out food with the Red Cross and stuff. And I'm like, I don't feel so well. I think I'm gonna go talk to the doctor. And I'm feeling a little shaky, nervous. I don't know. And it's a good thing I made that decision for a 14-year-old. That was a very wise decision because if I'd have got on that bus, uh, I would have probably died. So I go back into Dr. Fox's office and I tell her, and she looks at me, she checks me, and I'm shaking. She's like, "Oh my God!" So she knew exactly what it was. I was having anaphylactic shock, going through a pretty major reaction, and I was getting worse and worse by the minute. And they put me in the back of a deputy's car, and I remember going through an intersection. They had all these traffic islands. Man, this dude, he never even slowed down because by this point, man, I'm going into big seizures. I was going crazy. I was flopping like a fish out of water, and he went over those islands, man. That cruiser, it just floated over it, man. And they got me to the hospital, and they got me, on a drip, and they got all that shit out of my system just in time, and basically said if I'd have been a few minutes longer, that I wouldn't have made it, that I would have died of anaphylactic shock, and I wouldn't have been able to breathe. My throat was tightening up, and I was swelling up, and going into seizures, and it was bad, bad. And had I been a few minutes later getting there, I would have made it. And if I'd have gotten on that bus and gotten out to the county, I'd have been, Santa would have never been. But yeah, yeah, you got to watch out for some of these vaccines. Sometimes, they're worse than what they're supposedly curing. We found that out fairly recently. But I'm also not anti-vax. I will say that I don't trust Fauci, and I don't trust a lot of what a lot of people do. But I also know that like smallpox and a lot of the vaccinations that we took as babies, give your baby the vaccinations. They need those vaccinations. Okay. Um, I do know that can't remember the year, but it was in my it's been in my lifetime. I was probably middle aged, so it's probably in the 80s, probably 70s or 80s. There was a flu that went around, a real bad flu that went around. There was a lot of people that were dying, but strangely enough, old people weren't dying, and it was really weird because usually the elderly and the sick are the first people to go. During these kind of pandemics and epidemics and stuff. And but strangely enough, the elderly people were old enough to have taken the Spanish flu vaccine and vaccines from way back in the day, in the 30s and 40s and shit. And that's why they had immunity still to this. Um, I don't remember what it was. Something very similar to a Spanish flu, I'm assuming. It wasn't SARS. It was before SARS. So, but they weren't dying to it, and there was young people and everybody else dying and healthy people dying, but old people that were they were okay, and it was because of those vaccines. So I'm definitely not anti-vax. Um, but I'm not gonna take a vaccine that they created in 6 months that normally takes decades to develop. I'm not that stupid. I didn't do that. Actually, I got COVID, so I didn't even feel the need to do the vaccine. I got the first round of COVID in February before anybody ever knew it. My dad went to Italy and had him and my stepmom had COVID before most people in the United States had even heard of it. They picked it up in Italy, in December. So, yeah. Oh, I'll still take a tetanus, but tetanus don't bother me. That typhoid flu vaccine sure did, and I'm not I don't handle sulfa-based drugs very well, so there's certain things that I can't do. And should you have? I wouldn't necessarily say should. You could. Um, there's no right and wrong when it comes down to that. A lot of people don't like using thumpers on brandies. I'm one of them. I'm not a big thumper user anyway, but I'd rather use an infuser. And I've created a little wishbone inline infuser that I use, or jar rigs work real well with the bypass that I invented on there that everybody's using. Um, those work real well, but I would say a small infuser. It doesn't have to be a jar rig. You make them out of copper with a drain and an infusion port, so you can kind of change them out. You can put a little glass um, portal on there if you want to see. Have to see what level they are. But you can also put just a little sight glass on top where it's coming out of that infuser. And if it starts puking out, you'll know that you need to drain it and add some more. Um, but I would rather do that than use the thumper for my brandies. Typically with brandies, you don't want a high proof coming off. So if you can get your proof down to 120, 130 coming off with a brandy, um, or a whiskey for that matter, you're going to be better off than if you're coming off probably at 160, 70, because it's just you don't have as much water carrying forward, and a lot of that water will carry a lot of flavor with it. So, but if you want to add flavor, you can use the thumper with a puree. Um, but thumpers tend to be generally a quarter to a third the size of the boiler, just by general rule. There's no rule that says you have to do that. It's just a generalization that people try to follow. But if you have a drain in it, it really doesn't matter much, because anytime it gets full, you can just drain it. So you don't have to worry about it as much. Um, Whereas if you don't have the drain, then you'd have to stop everything, take the thumper off and pour it out, and then reconnect it. And that's a pain in the ass, try to do in the middle of a run. So I don't understand why everybody hasn't had drains on their thumpers all along. Um, but I developed the bypass a long time ago to bypass the thumper with the heads and the fours, and throw the bypass. So you only go into your thumpers with hearts. In which case, if you've already got your thumper set up with your puree, you don't have a bunch of four shots and heads going in there to making it all acetone, getting that ethyl acetate in there to make it all taste bitter and shit, and fingernail polishy. And so I developed the bypass that you see everybody using today. Was yours truly. But I developed that back in the 80s when I had a keg still. And and introduced that to the community maybe 5, 6 years ago. And after that, most all the builders and stuff, they put, you know, uh, bypasses on it. I originally did it for just my thumper, but at about the same time, I think Phil Billy and Rick Gibson and some other people were coming out with jar rigs, and it really worked well with the jar rigs too. So you could bypass while you're changing them out. So that's kind of a big deal for the jar rigs as well, having those bypasses. But thing about having a big thumper is it takes so much puree to fill that up to get the flavorings. You know what I'm saying? And it retains so much water. If you've got it in something closer to the steel coming off and it's going into like something small that you can drain and keep filling with that concentrated, puree and flavorings, it works a lot better that way. And those jar rigs work real well for that. Or you can do just small ones, just small copper um, vessels with a drain and an infusion port on it. Basically, a mini thumper with an infusion port on it and drain. Those probably work the best. But yeah, with your brandies, you want to kind of come off at low proof. If you want to take it onto a higher proof and maybe if you've used a lot of molasses and brown sugar and you want to make more of a rum with it, you can come off at a little higher proof and get rid of some of those off flavors that may come along with that and get a little bit more refined flavor. Just according, there's no right and wrong. It basically ends up being a preference and what flavors carry forward, what you like. Some people, everybody's opinion varies on that. So it's not like a fact thing. But I would try running it without a thumper and then coming off at like 120, just come straight off your steel with like an elbow and go straight into your condenser and try not to puke. So definitely don't put too much in there because you're not going up any kind of column and you're not puking into a head that refluxes. You're just going straight in the elbow in the condenser. So especially if you got a flat top pot. But if you can, try that and get some more water. And the more water that you can get, the more flavor, because a lot of those flavors don't bond to alcohol very well, but they will bond to the water. And with that, I agree, Mr. Dance. Time for a shot and time to say goodnight. Had another good, 11-17. Had a good show. Again, I will post these banana recipes for you in the DIY and in the militia, and also the starch and rice chart that I was showing. And I will put this molasses in there as well. So I'm going to put those three over. The rest of those that I showed today all should be in there already. But thanks for everybody for tuning in. Hit that like button, subscribe on YouTube. That way next week, I forgot I did subscribe like that one fella did today. And we're glad he came back and joined us. And if I miss any questions, like I just saw that I missed Curtis's, damn it. If I miss y'all's question, please remind me or copy paste it and say it again. I promise I won't get mad if you ask it 10 fucking times. I would much rather you ask it repetitively and me like, okay, because I don't see it. If it's something that I slipped past and I did not see this, for small batches of rice mesh, use several bags of the boiling bag rice is pre-cooked, and you can leave it in the bag and ferment the bags and juice. Awesome idea, brother. See, that's important. I'm glad you repeat that, man. If I don't pick up on that shit, make sure I do. Because definitely. That's right, Curtis. Definitely. Sorry I missed that, brother. So if I do, anytime I miss y'all's questions or miss something, no, sir, I haven't gotten it yet, but I'll be checking my mailbox. But yeah, definitely ask them again. If you have to cut and paste and repeat it 3 times, please do, because if I scroll past it, I try to. Um, I'm glad to hear that, Chris. I'm glad, brother. Hey, we can talk about that later on. You can tell me all about it. Um, but yeah, repeat those questions. I don't want to miss any questions, and I want to make sure that they all get answered. And I don't care to stay a little longer if I need to. And that was something that was a very good point that I didn't want to miss. So I'm definitely going to give that a try for sure because it's pre-cooked and that sounds like it's perfect. All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Like I said, hit that like, subscribe button, join. It doesn't cost anything on YouTube. Just subscribe. That way you get a little notification when we come on and a little friendly reminder. If you can't watch it live, you can watch it on Field Billies or on Distilling 101 or, Moonshine Militia. It's always on there. Also, if you can see on the video thing where this says uh, Distilling 101 is where most all this comes from. If you can go to that page and follow, that would be very helpful. I've got almost 200 in there, and I'd like to get close to 5 if possible. And that's because they'll start increasing my exposure, and I'll be on more reels, and so it'll just bring more people in, and the more people we can get in here and help and learn, the better. So it was another good night, and I think we learned a lot tonight. I've learned some things. That's what I love about it. I'm learning too. At the same time. So everybody's learning, and we learned a lot about rice tonight. So, all right, everybody have a great rest of your week, and we will see you guys. You can tune in Thursday, watch the girls on the ladies' night, and Friday for the shit show where anything goes. And if you're thin skinned, you probably don't want to go there. But if you want to joke around, talk shit, and get crazy and stupid, that's pretty good time and place to drink a few and act ignorant. And then Saturday night, if you want to learn if you hang over it too bad, just visit us on Saturday night at 8. We'll be back then. And until then, everybody have a great week. Shout on, and we'll see you this weekend. Take care.